Hello and welcome to a belated installment of the Weekly Stuff Podcast.
They often are, Jonathan. They often are.
Indeed. I am Jonathan Lack.
And I am Sean Chapman. You're belated, Jonathan. Sean Chapman.
We're both belated.
Yeah.
And we're here to talk about stuff. We're here to talk about Doctor Who and some Marvel news and some other things that have come up. It's been another 3 weeks since the last episode. Apologies. Shit happens.
Yeah.
Basically, I think we warned about this last time.
Yeah.
I was right in the middle of some busy stuff, too. I'll just say this right now because I want to explain, because I'm also putting more stuff up on the website right now, some movie reviews and things like that. I had been working all fall so far on this big thesis project I was doing at school. That took up a lot of my time. It was long. Finally done with all of that, and I'm getting back into some other stuff, so hopefully more time for podcasting and writing. Put 2 pieces up on the website, jonathanlight.com. So far this weekend, I had a piece on Interstellar, the new Chris Nolan movie. You have not seen that, right?
No, not yet.
Just want to make sure. And I really liked it, and I think I don't want to go into it too much here. I might talk about some other movies I've seen lately. Basically, I really, really enjoyed Interstellar. I think it's a really, really interesting movie, and it's not a review what I put up so much as a...
Would you call it a stellar film?
No, because I would want to kill myself.
Okay.
It's very good. Very good. Definitely recommend it. The review on the site is less of a review than sort of an in-depth examination of the movie because it's got spoilers and kind of goes in deep on a lot of the plot points and whatnot. So read that if you've seen the movie, which I'm sure many of you will have done by the end of the weekend. And got that. I just put up a review last night of this new movie that comes to Denver, where we are next weekend, but is in New York and LA right now. And it's called The Theory of Everything. That's a new
Stephen Hawking movie.
Stephen Hawking movie. It was good. I was impressed. I think those sorts of things, biopics are a really hit and miss proposition.
Yeah, they can be pretty rough.
And I think especially with something like Stephen Hawking, especially because he is obviously disabled, and Hollywood's track record with representations of disabled people, especially in a biopic, that's really not good. So the odds were stacked against this movie. It's really interesting. I think it's a very well done film. I don't know if it's a great movie. It doesn't completely transcend some of the biopic limitations, but I don't think you can at a certain point. It's tough to put a person's life into a movie. But it's really good. I think what it does interestingly is that it's less about Stephen Hawking on his own than this dual biopic about him and his first wife, Jane. And so it's sort of about this sort of personal human side of the man, rather than kind of focusing heavily on some of his scientific accomplishments and whatnot. And I think that could disappoint some people if they're going into it for certain reasons, because obviously Stephen Hawking's scientific advancements are fascinating.
Yeah.
But you can find out about that anywhere. And I think this is more cinematic.
Yeah. When you're watching a movie, I don't know how you would make a movie about someone establishing a bunch of theories about stuff.
Right. And, the science they offer is interesting, and it's very well acted by Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones, and it's got beautiful cinematography and music, so definitely very good movie. The rare biopic that I felt fully engaged by, and not feeling like, okay, quit cutting every 5 years, every 5 seconds or something. It's weird. So yeah, good movie. Seen a bunch of other movies. Maybe I'll talk about that in a little bit. That's the other thing, is because I've had time now, I've gone back to the theater and tried to catch up on things, because this has been a pretty good month. Well, I guess we're into November now. October was pretty good. November is shaping up to be pretty good. November is also shaping up to be absolutely fucking insane for video games, but talk about that more.
It always is.
So, on this episode, I think the main topic this week is we are wrapping up Doctor Who Series 8. We're going to talk about the penultimate episode, In the Forest of the Night, and then the 2-part finale, Dark Water and Death in Heaven.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
And then we'll do a wrap-up on the season as a whole. And when we get to that part, maybe we'll have more positive things to say. Little preview of coming attractions there. But we're also going to talk about the big Marvel Phase 3 movie announcements plan, because we usually talk about that stuff, so I just feel like we should follow up on it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other bits of news. But for now, let's just go with just general stuff. Sean, you have played Call of Duty Advanced Warfare.
Yes, I have. Which is I was not really planning on it, but there's been a month or so since I finished Shadow of Mordor, so I hadn't really played any video games in a really long time, and I'd just been spending all my time reading books for classes. And so the reviews came out for the new Call of Duty, and I was looking at them, and I just was watching some videos. I was I just had this epiphany that's the last fucking Call of Duty game I played came out in fucking 2009. Because the last one I played was Modern Warfare 2, so it's been a really, really long time. It's oh, fuck it, I'll just download this one, because you can just, I don't have to make it a big thing where you have to go to a store and all that shit. And also, it was really weird, I had no idea about this. Call of Duty basically launched on Monday if you bought the Day Zero edition.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, it was like if you pre-ordered the game, I guess you got it on Monday, but since you can just kind of pre-order the game whenever, even on Monday, since it technically comes out on Tuesday, you just get the version that comes out on Monday. So it's like you pre-order it and then you just get it, and I don't know what else. I think all you get, unless you buy like the super duper edition, is you just basically get the game and like maybe like an emblem or something. It's just like sitting, because since I had no idea about that, I was just going to preload the game for it to get it on Tuesday, and I was looking at it in the store. It's like, what do you mean Day Zero edition? What the fuck does that mean? It's like, what? And I'm like, well, okay. If I can just play the game now, I'll just play the game now. So
Sean, yeah. It's math. 0 comes before 1.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that's the logic.
It should really be like day negative 1, really. I don't know, Day 0 makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, 0 is not a negative number. Like it's,
yeah, 0 is nothing. Like, it's exactly nothing. You can't have a Day 0. That day would not exist. That should be like an episode of Doctor Who. But anyway.
It would probably be bad. I'm in a bad mood.
Most episodes of... okay, maybe I shouldn't say that most episodes of Doctor Who are good. That might not be right.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Most episodes of Doctor Who are not bad. They're not necessarily good, but I think there's a gap between good and bad. There's a nether space, as they might say.
There's a 0. Anyways, so I downloaded Call of Duty Advanced Warfare the day before it came out, but was really the day it came out. And I think yesterday now, I finished the campaign, just sort of like playing it piecemeal. And I think it's pretty good. Like, I'm kind of surprised that Call of Duty is still... It's still Call of Duty. Like, seriously, like I said, the last one I played was Modern Warfare 2. And they have made changes, and they've made some pretty important changes. But for a franchise that I have not touched on for 5 years, I was kind of surprised by, particularly, like, the structure of the campaign is, like, the exact same. It has a bit more of, like, the pacing... stuff that I liked from Call of Duty 4, but like because Modern Warfare 2 I thought like was just like fucking batshit crazy, the campaign, and had no sort of like quieter moments, and this campaign definitely has those, but it still has the like babysitter first person campaign shooter design of you are always with someone on all of your missions, and it's almost always the same dude. This time it's a guy named Gideon, because I guess they can't have Captain Price anymore. And so you just follow this guy Gideon around, and he opens doors for you and tells you where to go. And he has a little yellow blip above his head that just says follow constantly, because like 99% of your objectives in the game are just follow Gideon, and like the other 1% is just kill everybody, is just eliminate enemies. So that's kind of like the campaign design, which I don't love, but for a campaign that's only like 6 or 7 hours long, I thought it's enjoyable. You know, it runs at a really solid 60 frames per second. The game looks really, really good because it's designed clearly for next-gen consoles, and I played it on the PS4.
Can I just say, I've played a little bit of this game too. I've played about 4 missions, and I will say this is the first Call of Duty game I've ever looked at and gone, wow, that's a good-looking game.
Yeah, especially because since it's also set in like the relatively near future, it's like 2050 or something, it's avoids that problem that old Call of Duties like Call of Duty 4 and stuff had of just being really visually bland and brown all the time. There's a lot more sort of color and cool futuristic nonsense, and they definitely have some fun with their future tech, even if there's some stuff that I thought like maybe they could have gone a little bit farther and stuff that you could actually use in gameplay. But they have some cool stuff like in the campaign. There are these certain scripted sequences where you put down these like mute charge things that just like make the area around you really quiet, and it's just like the sound design of the game is really good, so the sound effect is really, really solid. Of like, it almost sounds like you're underwater. It's just a really cool effect, and makes you feel like, okay, we're going in for some like stealthy fucking badass shit here. And then the big change is you have, since it's the future, you have these like exosuits on, which basically all that means is instead of knifing people, you punch them when you melee, which is pretty cool. And then you also have this like double jump. Sometimes in the campaign, so like it depends on the mission whether or not you have the double jump. But in multiplayer, you always have the double jump. And then you also, if you sprint when you're like moving backwards or side to side, or when you're jumping, you will like do a little like dash in that direction. So it increases your mobility pretty significantly, and it also allows you in multiplayer to like traverse buildings and stuff really, really quickly and get like vertical positions on people. And that definitely changes it up. Although like I just still found myself playing the multiplayer. While that does make differences, it still feels super Call of Duty multiplayer in the sense of like, you know, your like time to kill in multiplayer is still like half of a second. You know, it's one of those like, you see a dude, you shoot him or he shoots you, whoever shoots the other person first, that person's dead, and then you respawn instantly and run out and die probably, or you get like 3 kills and then you die. It's still that same thing, although the customization for your classes is a lot more sophisticated because you can really mix and match anything you want. Like you have this, I think it's 12 different points system that you have, where it's like your assault rifle would be 1 point, and then like a silencer on it would be another point, a sidearm would be a point, like all of your like 3 perks would be different points, and like each grenade you have would be another point, and so you have these like 12 points that you can use and just kind of fill that up with everything you want, and everything is completely customizable. Like if you want to have no perks but just have like your assault rifle and your sidearm be like souped the fuck up and have really good like grenades, you could do that. Or if you don't like having kill streaks, you can just say no kill streaks and I'll just make everything else I have better. I think that system's really good.
Nice.
Yeah, so overall, like, it's still very much Call of Duty, so if you're someone who doesn't like Call of Duty that much, I don't think this would change your mind. Like, it doesn't change my mind on sort of the Call of Duty franchise.
You're not going to go back and play it every year now?
No, I don't. This will probably be the last Call of Duty game I play unless they really change things up and make something really crazy, because, like...
That's definitely true for me, because I have played, like I said, about an hour and a half of the campaign, and it just didn't grab me. And granted, I think I'm in a mood these days where, for whatever reason, new games on the PS4 are not grabbing me, because since last time, I have tried Middle-earth's Shadow of Mordor a bunch, and it never grabbed me, and I'm just not going to play it, because there's really nothing there that interests me. I made me want to play a Batman game, basically. But just the actual, like, system of the game, the whole game felt kind of clunky to me, so wasn't really into that. I tried Wolfenstein: The New Order. Maybe I need to give that another try. Maybe I just wasn't in a first-person shooter.
I think that game takes a little bit to get going. I think you should stick with it a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't grab me.
It took me a couple of hours to really get into it, but once I got into it...
And with Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, I was impressed by some of the improvements they made. Honestly, the biggest improvement I noticed is that the game has fucking cutscenes finally.
Yeah.
Like, that was a huge problem.
Yeah, instead of doing the, like, thing that all the ones since 4 have done of, like, when you're loading, here's the map, and here's Captain Price and, like, Ghost talking over this map while, like, it goes, like, boop, 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 and zooms in on little bits.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you just have, like, a cutscene with, like, characters or something at some point, Call of Duty?
Absolutely, and as a result, I thought the sort of just the story and the tone and the world of the game came through a lot clearer in just these 90 minutes than I think it would in an entire 8-hour campaign before to me. Like, and there's a lot of the cutscenes are good. I think they're well directed. The facial animation in the game is stunning.
Yeah.
I think there are some limitations, like Kevin Spacey should not have just been playing Kevin Spacey, at least in what I saw, because I've just, in the last year seen 2 seasons of House of Cards. I don't know why I don't like that show, but I did watch 2 seasons of it. And he is such an expressive actor with his face, and it distracted me seeing him doing all of his vocal stuff, but his face is just kind of still.
Yeah.
So that kind of bothered me, but other than that, like, I thought the facial animation was interesting. The worlds and the production design and the art direction of the game was a lot better than it usually is for Call of Duty. That's nice, and they've obviously added a lot of cool gadgets on top of things, and I think some of the shooting maybe is a little more fun as a result or whatever, but it's a lot of, drapery on the exact same game I've played a million times before, and it's a corridor shooter. You run down the corridor, you shoot, and I shouldn't even say you get to run down the corridor, because your AI guy you're following is always slower.
You get to run behind the dude. Like, that fucking started driving me crazy as I got to the end of the campaign. Just like, every time I'm in a corridor that, like, only one person can fit down, and I'm just, like, sprinting and trying to jump over the fucker in front of me. It's like, just move! Like, I can fucking play video games! Just let me play video... Like, I wish... There should seriously be a thing. Like, you should be able to pick an option that's just, like, erases Gideon from the game.
Yes.
And you can... And it just, like, adds a press X to open door button. And so you can just, like, all of a sudden, it's like... Fucking hallelujah! I can open doors on my own, I can just run down hallways. If I want to explore the environments, I don't have this fucking British fuck yelling at me constantly. It's like, oh, what are you doing? We have to go, Troy Baker! Because your guy's played by Troy Baker.
Which is good. I mean, any game where the first lines of dialogue are Troy Baker, I will play some.
And it's also funny, too, because they use performance capture, but they clearly, like, designed the character, like, off of Troy Baker himself, because he looks like Troy Baker, which is weird, because I've never seen that. So it's like, it's weird to see his voice coming from him in a video game.
It is from A Second Son, it looks like him.
Kind of, but like it's his kind of facial structure, but I feel like it's not exactly Troy Baker.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, it's just fucking Troy Baker, only his hair is like more brown.
Right.
But yeah,
well, anyway, so it's just like all of those things kind of compound, especially the follow thing, because we're making jokes. I really do think it's a huge problem. Like,
yeah, I think it
because
is.
why does the game have a sprint button? Because at a certain point, you're never allowed to sprint. Because Gideon doesn't sprint; he just walks as slower than you walk, even. So you have to like lightly tap the control stick, and it's like this is not fun. This is boring.
And then also, it like because Gideon, that character's also just really annoyed me because he's the character who like for the first half of the game. He's your, like, officer in charge, and so he's just constantly, like, kind of, like, breaking your balls and being like, oh, you're not that good, Mitchell, because I remember that's your character's name. It's like, you, whatever, like, you're not that great. And then I'm just looking at this, like, because you actually have, since you can get upgrades at the end of campaign missions based on, like, kills, you get headshot kills, grenade kills, and the collectibles you find will give you points. So there's like a tally of the kills you have, like, over the course of the campaign at the bottom of the screen. After every mission, when, like, fucking Gideon would be like, you're not so awesome. I was just looking at that, it's like, I killed 300 people! I am, like, the best soldier! And that's not, like, I'm not some guy who killed 300 people because I dropped a bomb. I personally went out there and shot every single one of them. I killed 300 people today, you British fuck! What did you do? You just fucking walked in front of me and got in the way. I cannot tell you how many times I shot Gideon on accident because he would just walk right the fuck in front of me. It's so...
Yeah.
I fucking hated that guy.
I know.
He's a real cocksucker.
Here's the other thing I want to talk about because I thought this was one of the most bizarre structural decisions I've ever seen in a game. You open Advanced Warfare with this big, kind of awesome, sprawling level in Korea where, again, North Korea is taking someone over, and for some reason America's involved.
South Korea, and they don't really get into the geopolitics of that. Just like, fucking...
Which is good. Call of Duty should not get into geopolitics. They understand literally nothing about the world. That's another thing I noticed.
Then, of course, you do the orbital drop thing in a pod, like Halo style, and that never goes well for anybody, and it just makes it like, people should just use parachutes again, because this seems to fuck up way more often than that did in video games.
But that's a good mission, right? That first mission, it's good.
It's a good start mission,
It's a start mission, and it's a fully fleshed out mission. It feels like a full Call of Duty mission.
Yeah.
Then, you go and do training and target practice.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's a weird thing that, like, video games... I feel like it happens more and more these days where, like, they're trying to play with the pacing of campaigns and stuff. So it's like they want to have, like, the big, awesome opening, but then they need to have the tutorial stuff, so you can't have the awesome opening and do the tutorial at the same time because it's just, like, it's too hard to do.
But you don't need the tutorial.
But then by the time you get to, like, the tutorial is no longer needed. You're exactly right. It's a really weird pacing thing.
That was bizarre.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Because it's the same Call of Duty tutorial that they've had since 4 also, because it's like you're walking around and, like, shooting, like, you know, like, targets that instead of them being, like, paper targets or whatever, now they're, like, digital targets, but it's the same thing.
Like, they have this new, it's like the VATS system or Deadeye or something, where you slow down time.
Yeah, like, I never really used that in missions.
I didn't, useful. But, I mean, that's what they're training you on.
Yeah, there's a tutorial mission for it.
I mean, all you do is you press up on the fucking D-pad. You don't need a giant tutorial mission for it. So... In any case, maybe I'll play the rest of this because it's a short campaign, and it is fun. I mean, Call of Duty is never not enjoyable on some level, but it's like, I've played it.
And sometimes it feels like that campaign structure just gets in the way of itself.
Yeah.
Because it feels, especially, like, for me, coming back to it after not having played a campaign like that for 5 years, it feels super archaic, because most other major first-person shooters have, like, gone in the complete opposite direction, you know, like BioShock Infinite or Far Cry 3 or Destiny are, like, big and open and expansive, and they do not do the thing of, like, you're going to follow a guy down, because, you know, it makes sense for Call of Duty on a certain level. I understand why they do it, because they want to have their big action movie moments, but I feel like you can kind of figure out a way to do that and still give the player free reign, you know? Like, at the very least, let me open my own fucking doors, you know?
I definitely think the ridiculous level of critical hype for this game when it came out kind of... It shows that I think gaming critics do like just safety in games at a certain point.
Although, to be fair, like, it's... Like, this game has gotten a fair number of, like, 8 out of 10 kind of level reviews, which is, you know, for other mediums is maybe not, like, that great, but for, like... Or, like, for video games, a major release getting, like, an 8 out of 10 is relatively still new.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know. Destiny got 5s out of 10, so it's a weird thing.
Well, except for it also got a lot of 6 out of 10s.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it got 6 out of 10s, it got some, like, 8 out of 10s, but, like, I feel like this game, even though this game is probably better than Ghost, like the previous Call of Duty, I didn't play it, but everything I've heard, it's better. It still has like basically the same like level of reviews.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think people
the ones I saw were higher than last year's, but I mean that's the thing. Call of Duty never gets a bad review from people.
It doesn't get like a crazy low review.
Which I don't get at a certain point that someone doesn't like send like, hey, this is the exact same thing I've played before. But oh well.
Well, because like I think there's like a certain review philosophy that's like, well, yeah, but the thing we played before was still really good, and it still technically has.
But with what you're saying, I mean,
stuff.
I do agree with what you're saying though, that I think gaming has evolved so far past. Like I think Call of Duty made a big jump forward with 4, and it is still stuck in 2007. You know, if the next Mass Effect came out and played like Mass Effect 1 from 2007, we would all skewer it. We would all give it 1s out of 10s.
I mean, partially because like that series already moved on from
Sure, but it's a weird thing. I don't know. It's fine. You've played more of the game than I have, so what would your recommendation be?
I think like if you're someone who really likes Call of Duty, like fucking get it. And if you're someone like me who liked Call of Duty, like really liked Call of Duty 2 and Call of Duty 4, and then like with the subsequent ones kind of fell off the series, like I think it's still really good. I think the series is still really fun. I'm enjoying the multiplayer. I mean, the main reason I got it is just because I wanted a new game to play the multiplayer, like just to play some multiplayer so I could kill like 30 minutes or something when I have nothing else to do. And I think the game's still good at that. Like, it makes me a little bit frustrated because like it still has a lot of the same, and problems is not necessarily the right word, but the same like design philosophy that Call of Duty has always had, that like I grew to really kind of dislike the really fast time to kill in that stuff where it really feels like it sort of disincentivizes really intellectual play, you know, and it just makes it like a run out there and have the fastest reflexes kind of game a lot of the time, but
you know, some people like that, and more power to them. You know, Call of Duty has never just given its fans the middle finger, I don't think. So that's nice.
And then one of the weird side effects of this game that, like, maybe it's just, like, the few times I've tried to use it, but in the multiplayer, sniper rifles, I feel like, are practically useless now, because people can boost and double jump and move so fast that way, it's, like, impossible to hit anybody with a sniper rifle. It is fucking... It's crazy. Like, I feel like I heard a lot of people say that about Titanfall as well, that, like, the movement in Titanfall made sniper rifle like completely perfunctory because
I don't even remember if there are sniper rifles.
There definitely are sniper rifles in Titanfall because I've seen videos of people playing and trying to use a sniper rifle and being like, "This is fucking impossible!" Like, now I'm just going to use the assault rifle.
Right now, I remember I have seen a fucking sniper rifle in Titanfall, and I was like, "What the hell is the point of this? Why would you have it in this game?"
Yeah,
Titanfall's great, but that's just a weird balance.
Yeah,
thing.
like Advanced Warfare has the same thing where like you have this new movement paradigm that a lot of these multiplayer shooters seem to be doing, because even Destiny has a little bit of that with like the movement abilities, but it definitely makes certain of those weapon rolls like completely useless. It's just, you can get some sniper kills in Advanced Warfare, and it's not like I'm the greatest sniper ever, but I definitely was just finding it like, why would you ever try to use this? Like, this is just an impossible way to play, whereas in like Call of Duty 4, I found playing as a sniper multiplayer really rewarding and fun because you got to think about it from like a different perspective. And this one's just like, maybe I'll be lucky and someone's stupid enough to like just be running like it's an old Call of Duty game and not using the boost.
Yeah, who knows? By the way, did you see the announcement? I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago about the what's in the Destiny expansion pack?
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing.
Pretty anemic slate of content.
Yeah,
especially like if you're an Xbox One owner.
You're
getting so fucked.
Like, is that's like? Because we should just detail like, so what it is for the next Destiny expansion. It's like what, 3 story missions, and this is for if you're PS4, 2 strikes, and then a raid, and like 3 multiplayer maps, I believe.
Yeah.
So like that's a pretty slim slice of content, especially only having 3 story missions is really weird. But if you're not on the PS4 and maybe the PS3 as well, you only have 1 strike. Yeah. So one of those strikes is Sony exclusive.
And we should say there's already, and I didn't even know this, one of the strikes that's on it now is
one of the Marsh strikes is exclusive, yeah.
I didn't even, already. Like, my brother owns it on Xbox One, and he had not known that, and I told him that, and he's like, so we only have 5 strikes, and you guys have 6? I'm like, yeah. It's like, I would like 6 strikes, and that's ridiculous. Like, that is such a ripoff.
That's a huge
part of the game. Like, that's
like... 5, like difference from 5 to 6 is pretty fucking significant on the game that's somewhat light on content.
Yes, very light on content. Let's be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's just weird. Like, and what's the problem is that they're charging the same for it, and they charge the same for the base game. They charge the same for the expansion pack. and you're getting, it's not that you're missing an emblem or a gun. You're missing huge chunks of gameplay.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's the exclusivity stuff, man. Like, this is probably the biggest one I've ever seen, because usually it's like with Call of Duty, Microsoft has had we get the map pack like 6 months or something before Sony does for a very long time, but it still comes over. I mean, this is going to come over to the Xbox people eventually. But
it is, but here's what I was going to say:
really long time.
The difference is that the Sony people in that 6 months don't have to pay to get nothing. Like it's the weird thing with the Destiny exclusivity is just odd. But oh well, and I'm going to be interested to see if that expansion content is enough to really get me interested in Destiny again. They also are raising the level cap to 32,
which is such a weird
arbitrary number.
Yeah.
Who knows? I liked all the time I spent with Destiny, but its longevity seems pretty non-existent at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a video game. Like, I didn't necessarily expect to be playing it for a super long amount of time. Like, I played it for a month and a half. So
no, I did. I played it for 2 months. I have 70 hours in that game.
Yeah.
So I like Destiny. It's going to be high on my top 10 this year. It's a good game.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. Speaking of games, I mean, there's a lot coming out this November, and I just wanted to preview that because I think that's probably what's going to drive this podcast this month, honestly. Next week is Assassin's Creed Unity. I'm going to play that. Unless it gets 1s out of 10s or something, I definitely want to play that.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I'm really curious to see what the reviews for that game are going to be, and also what that game itself is going to be.
Yeah, well, I'm getting that. That's coming Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday is Far Cry 4, which I think you're getting, right?
Yeah, I have that pre-ordered, yeah.
Okay, so between the two of us, we're going to get those Ubisoft games, and I'm excited for both.
Get that Ubisoft.
Yeah, and I'm excited for both. They look great.
I'm super fucking excited for Far Cry 4. Far Cry 3 was so good.
Yeah. No, and I didn't play Far Cry 3, and I'm excited to just jump in with this one, where they've obviously... looks like they've made it even better than before.
I wonder if there's any Troy Baker in Assassin's Creed Unity. Because I know he plays the villain in Far Cry 4.
Right.
Because that would be pretty fucking incredible if the 4 major AAA releases, starting with Middle-earth, all had Troy Baker in a leading role.
That'd be great.
I mean, that dude is
we didn't mention
crazy prolific now.
I love that Troy Baker also last month released an album, an indie rock album. I haven't listened to it yet, but I really want to. Maybe if we listen to that, we can talk.
He should do, each song as a different character he's played in different games. And then he could have an album with, 50 songs on it.
I think there's a bonus track on it that is Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
We got one of them. So we're going to play those. Let's see, I'm interested in Persona Q on the 3DS.
Yeah, at some point I need to get around to picking up Persona 4 Arena 2, because I still haven't... I want a huge chunk of time to play that, because that story mode on Persona 4 Arena was 40 hours long.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, it's basically like a novel,
right?
At some point.
No, I gotcha. So there's that. Let's see. There was a game that just came out on the 3DS actually last week that I hadn't heard of, but when it came out, I looked at the reviews and what it is, and it looks really interesting to me. It's called Fantasy Life.
I don't know what that is.
It's an interesting game. It's made by a lot of the people who made some of the early Final Fantasy games. So, for instance, Nobuo Uematsu wrote the music, which I will sign on for that right away because he's awesome. But it's an interesting game. I guess it's a kind of cross between a JRPG kind of battle, exploration system and something like Animal Crossing, where you have a town that you're kind of keeping up, and you start your roles. There's one of 12 roles, baker, fisherman, knight, all of these different things you can pick. And I guess you can switch between them on the fly too, and they each, level up separately, and there's different things you can do with them.
So finally bringing real fucking jobs to the job system, that's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Fucking being a fucking knight's not a real job. Being a baker, that's an honest fucking job.
Yes. No, it sounds like an interesting game, and I think people who have played it, I've seen some mixed reaction, no one's saying it's bad, but it interests some people more than others, clearly, which it's the kind of game that would do that.
Yeah,
that sounds interesting. I think Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, I had been a little wondering if I would be interested in that game just because the 3DS version was so good and I didn't know if I would need it. And then they did that Nintendo Direct detailing everything that's in that game. Holy fuck, they went to town on Smash Bros. For Wii U.
8 players?
There's an 8-player Smash mode.
8 players?
Yeah, I saw a video of it online the other day.
That seems like fucking madness.
It is madness. It's hilarious to watch. It's
imagine
madness.
doing that and turning up item fucking to crazy and putting only hammers or something. Just be, you wouldn't even be able to tell what's going on.
But it's, I mean, they don't make you play 8 players, so that's,
obviously.
Right. So, I mean, but it looks great. I mean, there's all these other modes. Everything you can do in the game, you can do co-op, basically. There's a lot of cool content, and the maps they have look great. It's a almost totally different slate of maps from what I can tell than on 3DS. So that makes it's the same character roster, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely going to play that game now because that looks amazing. It looks like it's... What I was excited about learning is that it's not just the 3DS version in high def. It's its own game, it looks like. And I think that's cool.
It's Super Smash Bros. For Wii U.
Yeah.
Like, it's a completely different title.
Right. That's still a failure.
It's as different from Super Smash Bros. For 3DS as, like, Super Smash Bros. Melee is to Super Smash Bros. Brawl.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, they're different subtitles.
And then within all of this, if there's time, I might try to pick up and play the Pokemon Omega Ruby, I think is what it's called, Alpha Sapphire, that remake that's coming out. That was kind of interesting. There was a demo that came out for the 3DS. I played that. And
you're like, hey, this is a Pokemon game. Why did I download this demo?
I should say, I played that demo and I was like, this is kind of interesting. And then I was like, oh, right, I have not finished Pokemon Y yet. And I went back and finished Pokemon Y. Pokemon Y is a really good game, I should say. I mean, it's as Pokemon games go, it's kind of the same problem Call of Duty Advanced Warfare has, where it's really all window dressing at a certain point. Yeah. Although I think there are some mechanical changes to the game that do help it a lot. But that was interesting. The last 10 hours or so of Pokemon Y get weirdly dark. And just kind of twisted and, non-Pokemon in some ways, where, there's animated cutscenes and stuff. It's weird. But it's a good game. So if you haven't played that year-old game, play that year-old game. Yeah. But anyway, lots of stuff coming out in November is my point.
Yeah. Actually, I want to go back to Super Smash Bros. 3DS, because, talking about that made me remember that a week ago I was up on campus hanging out with some friends, and one of them had a 3DS, and I had the opportunity to play Super Smash Bros. For 3DS on his 3DS, which also happened to be the first time I ever really played anything on the 3DS at all.
Okay.
And so I played I played 3 matches against a level 6 or something CPU, and I played as Link, Sonic, and Pac-Man. And I should have to say that for someone who has never touched the 3DS, that fucking circle pad, fuck that thing. That thing is awful. Holy fucking shit. I'm sure I would probably be able to get kind of used to it if I played the system more, but just jumping into it immediately, and on a game that I already know how it's supposed to control, and all the Smash Brothers stuff seemed totally fine. It's Smash Brothers. I thought Pac-Man was kind of interesting, although I do think he should just be normal fucking old school Pac-Man all the time and not be stupid 3D Pac-Man. But yeah, that fucking circle pad, man. Holy fucking shit.
Well, here's the thing. I think definitely you had a loaded demo of that because Smash Bros. Is by far the most demanding game on the 3DS. Yeah. I mean, if you're playing Pokemon or a Persona game or any RPG where all you're using it for is basic movement, it's perfectly fine. I don't like that it has active resistance, but it's fine. It is obviously, and I love Smash Bros. 3DS. I have played 40 hours in. I fucking love that game. It's great. But I understand if you were to have never picked up a 3DS, you pick it up for Smash Bros. And you know Smash Bros. Well, and you try it. Yes, that would be the reaction.
Yeah, especially I think a big mistake was also starting off playing as Link, who's the character I like. This is my best character in Smash Brothers game. It was just no, this is impossible. It just feels so slippery, and trying to do smash attacks with it. It made me totally understand how people, all the stories of people breaking their circle pad playing the game.
Yeah.
It's I think that's half them trying to play the game and half them just being so frustrated with this fucking circle pad.
I will say,
you have to destroy it.
I will say 40 hours, you do get good at it. I've even managed to get 5,000 feet in home run contest with it. So, eventually you get good at it, but it's
but
don't let that sour you on the 3DS entirely. I swear it's a good system.
It's oh my god. It reminded me of the one time I played a PSP, my friend let me borrow his PSP for a little bit to just play a couple of games, and the little analog nub thing on that thing was just this is impossible. This wasn't made for humans. I imagine it would be if you handed a kid an N64 controller today, and they grab that and try to use the analog stick and this isn't an analog stick. What is this? It hurts. It's hurting me to use this.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, but
yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to talk about something else here. Okay, Sean, I want to take some of these news pieces kind of backwards.
Okay.
Let's start with the simple one. It was from this week. It was the big thing. Disney announced the title for Star Wars Episode 7.
Yes, they did, yeah.
And it's Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Well, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Every logo they show of that and every announcement just says Star Wars The Force Awakens. They're not saying Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens.
It must be.
I know, but what's going on? It bothers me. What's the actual title of the movie? Because your official logo for the movie now does not have Episode 7 in it. I'm annoyed.
It has to have Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. That has to be it. If that's not it,
that's fucked up.
Yeah, there's no there's just nothing. Like, this world is meaningless.
I mean, it's one of those titles that, like, it just sounds like a video game title to me.
It does. Like, because it just reminds me of Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, which is an okay video game.
Yeah. So that's just that news. It's just funny that they still have told us so little about this Star Wars movie.
And hasn't it finished principal photography and like all that shit? Like,
well, yes, but that's why they announced it. Is that they announced this the day they finished. They wrapped principal photography. So
they're like, celebrate that. Yeah. Here's our like really kind of planned subtitle. It's like, okay, at least it's not Dawn of Justice.
Yeah, no, it's a fine title. I don't want to be down.
It's not. Yeah, like. Because it's like, it's a subtitle. Like, who really gives a shit?
Let's be honest. Most of the Star Wars subtitles are actually pretty awful. Yeah. A New Hope is really boring if you actually think about it. Or, The Phantom Menace. It's just
there's something I like about The Phantom Menace as a title. I don't know. It's got a little something.
Right.
Attack of the Clones is always one that I kind of forget is called Attack of the Clones. It is not called The Clone Wars because that's what the subtitle should have been. Because Attack of the Clones sounds like some shitty fucking 50s B movie, Yeah.
Well, and also the clones don't attack, and there are no Clone Wars in it. Yeah. So I don't know what. It's Anakin and Padme make out. Yeah. That's what the movie should have been
Star Wars Episode 2, Anakin and Padme make out while Obi-Wan does some, like, really light, like, detective shit.
Yeah.
The movie.
Revenge of the Sith's okay.
Yeah.
Empire Strikes...
Empire Strikes Back is a great fucking subtitle.
Right.
That subtitle is phenomenal. Return of the Jedi is pretty good. I think Revenge of the Jedi would have been the better title because they changed it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, then Sith have to have a revenge.
I have a neighbor...
Even though it's like, Revenge of the Sith is kind of like revenge for what?
Right.
Like, really? I mean, this is... It's like, you don't get to have revenge when the Jedi and the Sith had, like, this long-standing war way before the series even took place. Like, that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah. I have a neighbor who has the Revenge of the Jedi poster, before that was altered.
Nice.
That's a cool poster.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a good title. But anyway... That's the Star Wars thing. Everything I've heard about this movie, like, on the side that Disney is not announcing formally, sounds really good. I like that, they're shooting it on film. It looks like they're doing all practical effects. Or, I mean, obviously not all in this day and age. That's just doesn't happen anymore. But it looks like primarily practical effects. And, interesting story rumors I've heard. So, I'm excited for this movie. I'm really interested to see what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious to see what made the Force go to sleep. And then what will make it now awaken.
Something I'm a little more ambivalent about is the same day Disney announced that Toy Story 4 is coming out in 2017. And
I still haven't seen Toy Story 3. That's a movie I really should watch because I know everybody really likes it.
It's phenomenal. I mean, I think it's the best Toy Story movie. Like, here's the thing. The Toy Story movies get better and better. I think 2 is better than 1 and 3 is better than 2 and 1. So it's... I don't have any, like proven reason to be uneasy about Toy Story 4... Except that...
Other than, Toy Story 4 just sounds kind of wrong.
It sounds weird. Toy Story 3 totally ended their story. It's, it was very full circle and beautiful, and it was an ending. And, the things that are interesting to me about the Toy Story 4 announcement is that it's being directed by John Lasseter again. We'll see. I want to see if he still has it, because he has not directed anything different for a while. He did Cars in 2006, and then Cars 2 when that came out. Those were both not particularly good. And back in the day, the only non-Toy Story movie he's ever directed besides Cars is A Bug's Life back in the day. So, and he's spent years now as a Disney executive. So I'm going to be interested to see if he still has it as a director. It's being written by Rashida Jones and whoever her writing partner is. They wrote a movie, I think 2 years ago, called Celeste and Jesse, which was a good movie. She also stars in it. She's one of the people on Parks and Rec, but she's also a writer. So that's an interesting choice for writers. That's someone new to the series. But I just think it's a weird thing. Like, mainly it's this disappointment for me of Pixar is just a sequel factory.
Yeah.
And I don't get it at a certain point. I mean, I get the money side of it, but Pixar was making plenty of money without doing the sequels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if, I don't know, if it feels like there's an element of Pixar today that kind of reminds, with the car shit, that kind of reminds me of, old 80s cartoons like G.I. Joe and Transformers, where it was we have to, make new toys, and to justify new toys, we have to, make new series and stuff, because the actual money's all in the merchandising.
Uh-huh.
That, what if Toy Story 4 is the, animated Transformers movie where they just kill off, every existing toy, and to, introduce replacements, basically.
I don't know. And I mean, the other thing someone pointed out on Twitter that is true is that they've made a number of little, 5-minute Toy Story short films since Toy Story 3 came out. And those are fantastic. So they've literally never made anything less than great with Toy Story. But that's always the thing, is it's like Russian roulette.
Exactly. Because now that it's all this really good Toy Story stuff, that means that like when they make the one bad Toy Story thing, it's probably going to be really bad, right?
Yeah. When you spin the barrel enough times,
Yeah.
you're going to shoot yourself in the head. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. There is an original Pixar movie coming out next year called Inside Out, and it's done by Pete Docter, who did Monsters, Inc. and Up. So obviously he's one of the most talented people there. He's never gone back and made a sequel to one of his movies. There was Monsters University, but he didn't do that. And I'm going to be interested to see that because I like that there's an old Pixar guy finally making a new original movie. Most of those guys.
Until he makes a sequel to Up, Down.
Yes. Well, and it's like Andrew Stanton, who's one of the old Pixar guys who did Finding Nemo and WALL-E. He's coming back to Pixar, but he's doing Finding Dory.
Right, yeah.
So who gives a shit? I don't know. The only Pixar sequel I'm vaguely interested in is The Incredibles 2, which is apparently kind of happening.
Yeah.
But that's only happening because Brad Bird apparently came back and said, I want to make it. That's the only thing that interests me. Because I think they were very much on that plan of, we'll make it if Brad Bird has an idea. If he never does, it's never happening. Brad Bird's a smart guy, so we'll see. But yeah, Pixar's kind of, they've lost a lot of their cultural cachet, I think. Yeah. Oh well.
Toy Story 4.
It just sounds stupid.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of Monsters University in the same, or like Finding Dory. Like they all sound like this would be like a really bad sketch on like SNL of them like just spitballing like fake.
Here's the
Pixar
thing.
sequels.
The Muppets movie that came out this year, Muppets Most Wanted, really good movie. The opening song is about making a sequel, and there's a joke line in there by Gonzo about how Disney is waiting for Tom Hanks to make Toy Story 4.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a joke, because like this line from this Muppets comedy.
Yeah.
It's funny. Oh well. But let's talk about some other sequelization that sounds a little more interesting. Marvel had an announcement a couple weeks ago where they announced, I think to a lot of people's surprise, their entire Phase 3 slate.
Yeah.
They have detailed every movie they're making through 2019, and Kevin Feige said, that's what we're making. We're not adding or subtracting anything from this. This is what it is. So that's kind of interesting. We know pretty hands-on what this is going to be until 2019.
Yeah.
And I find that pretty interesting. So let's just run through the list of movies, because I think this is a fascinating slate, and then break it down. This is really exciting stuff. Let's see. So May 1st, 2015, we know that. It's Avengers Age of Ultron. Later that year in July is Ant-Man. Come back in May 2016 with Captain America Civil War. November of that year is Doctor Strange, which they still have not found their Doctor Strange for, so we'll see about that. May 2017 is Guardians of the Galaxy 2. July 2017 is Thor Ragnarok. I like that title. Then we have November of 2017, Black Panther. May of 2018, Avengers Infinity War Part 1. July of 2018 is Captain Marvel. November of 2018 is Inhumans. And then May 3, 2019 is Avengers Infinity War Part 2.
Dawn of Justice.
Wouldn't that be great if they announced that? I'd like to just tack that off.
And then there's just like a little like picture of a middle finger next to it.
I mean, here's the thing. This slate did kind of feel like a middle finger to DC.
Yeah.
Because here's what's interesting about it. It clearly shows that they are going to be paying off on what their big plans have been by getting up to this Infinity War thing. That's a big two-part movie.
Thanos.
Yeah. So that's interesting. However, notice all the movies that are not being made here. There's not an Iron Man 4. There's not a Hulk movie. There's not a Black Widow movie. The only sequels...
There's not a Hawkeye movie.
No, none of those. The only sequels to existing properties are Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thor. And the only one going back to Phase 1 are Captain America and Thor. So I think that's kind of interesting. They're very clearly kind of pushing ahead with new characters and new films.
Although, like, as we noted like before on the previous episode... Tony Stark is going to be in the Captain America sequel, so he'll still be around.
Right.
He's just not getting his own movie.
Which is interesting, and that shows how strong their brand is, because I do think if the other Phase 2 movies had not done as well as they did, we would be getting an Iron Man 4. Because
probably.
Iron Man 3 is still their second highest grossing movie. It's one of the highest grossing movies ever made, and... you would want more of that. But luckily, Guardians and Cap 2 and Thor 2 all did really big business. And I think these are probably going to do even bigger because we're going to have that Avengers 2 boost again.
Yeah.
It's a pretty ingenious business model at this point. They can only kind of go up and up.
Yeah.
And then there are also, again, some risks in here. Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and Inhumans, those are all kind of on that Guardians of the Galaxy level of they are not guaranteed hits.
Yeah, and it should be noted that the Captain Marvel they're talking about is Carol Danvers, so that would be like the first, like I don't remember when the Wonder Woman movie might be coming out, but like for Marvel that'll be their first female-led superhero movie.
Also, first black superhero in Black Panther,
Black Panther,
who they have cast. That's Chadwick Boseman.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. He's a great actor. I saw him in the Jackie Robinson biopic 42. That's an example of how biopics can be really bad. Chadwick Boseman, however, was fantastic, and my biggest disappointment of that movie was that he couldn't play Jackie Robinson in a better movie.
Yeah.
But he's a movie star. He's got it, and apparently he's going to show up in Captain America: Civil War first.
Yeah, Black Panther's a really cool character, so nice. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. I'm excited for all these movies. They all sound great. Still, going to see what Ant-Man winds up turning into, and if those characters are going to play a role in any of this. I'm going to be interested to see. Yeah. But yeah, I think Thor Ragnarok just is a cool title, and I like, they confirmed Loki will be a main character again, and bringing that back around. That's going to be great. And apparently, what they're saying is that, Thor Ragnarok is kind of similarly important to Captain America Civil War. Like, I guess Captain America will be picking up some of the fallout from Avengers 2, and Thor will be picking up the rest of it. So, I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they're probably going to be integrating those characters more now. So it's an interesting lineup of movies in part because it's a lot of new stuff.
Yeah. It'll be great in, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the movie should just end with, Peter Quill, getting back to Earth. He lands there and it's like, what the fuck has been happening on my planet this whole time? What the fuck? The Chitauri invaded? And someone made this fucking crazy robot dude named Ultron? What the fucking shit? Yeah. You leave a planet for 15 years, and what happens? Everything goes to shit.
And I think Chris Pratt would be the right guy to deliver that monologue.
Yeah.
I think he could do it. Absolutely. So let's see. Anything else interesting here you wanted to point out?
Well, I just think it's a cool slate of movies. I like that they're really dedicated to bring in a lot of new characters, and that, again, they're sort of reaching in, kind of like with Guardians of the Galaxy, they're reaching into more obscure realms of the Marvel Universe, like with Captain Marvel and Black Panther, that are characters that people don't really know that much about. I mean, I don't really know that much about Captain Marvel. I've been meaning to pick up they recently kind of mess around with the character in two different ways, where there's this with Carol Danvers, and they kind of think they finished her run as Captain Marvel in a really interesting way that I've heard about is really good, and so I've been meaning to pick that up. And then they have a new character that's sort of taken up the mantle that also sounds really interesting. So I've been kind of curious about going in and reading some old Captain Marvel stuff. So I'm glad I have an excuse to do that now, because I'm not that familiar with the character.
And I guess Inhumans, Kevin Feige is saying that's I guess a kind of a passion project for him, and that's one that is going to have
obscure.
It's going to have fallout, though, he says, into kind of the next phase of all of this. And those are characters being set up for later. I'm
really excited to see what they're going to do with Black Bolt, who's the leader of the Inhumans, and his power is basically that he's so powerful that if he says anything, a single word would just level a city. That's how powerful he is. He's a really cool character. I'm curious to see if they'll be able to cast someone with some fucking real gravitas man.
I had heard some rumors that they were planning on having Vin Diesel play that role, because it would be funny because then he's voice only in Guardians, but here he would be body only.
Yeah, sure. Vin Diesel has an intimidating physical presence.
Speaking of which, the Furious 7 trailer came out. Did you watch that?
No, I was just thinking that if Vin Diesel plays Black Bolt, the big thing that should happen in one of the Avengers movies, when Black Bolt finally speaks, he should just say, "I am Groot," and it's the biggest fucking plot twist ever.
Nice. But no, what I was going to say, it just reminded me because of Vin Diesel, the Fast and Furious 7 trailer came out. I just want to say,
is it called Fast and Furious 7?
It's called Furious 7.
Okay.
Which is weird because the previous movie was called Fast and Furious 6.
But before that was Fast 5.
But, here's what I was saying. Okay. Before that was Fast 5, and if you watch Fast and Furious 6, the actual title card just says Furious 6.
What?
Yes.
So this one is just Furious 7 is its whole title.
Yes.
Regardless.
Yes.
Okay.
Which makes sense. It's a revenge movie. I think that sounds good. It sounds like Dirty Dozen or something.
Are there going to be a group of 7 characters that are really furious about something?
I guess.
That would be a good twist on the title and the sequel number as well.
Yes. No, it looks good. That trailer is so good. The Fast and Furious series, they are just doing those big crazy stunts better than anyone right now. And the kind of stunt they show to open that trailer with is just fucking nuts. I love it. I'm excited.
Do you think the next movie just has to be an ampersand with the number 8 next to it? Just and 8.
Yeah. And those are going to have to come back at some point.
Yeah. The 9 and the 10.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still waiting for 8 Fast, 8 Furious.
Yeah.
Get back to that. Yeah, I don't know what they do with titles going forward, but who knows. Maybe whoever has to come up with the titles for those movies is just hoping this next one bombs so he doesn't have to do it anymore.
Fuck this. Do they count Tokyo Drift in the official numbering and just like because it didn't have a number, but they're like the next one was just 4?
Well, the next one was just called Fast and Furious,
but then the next one was 5.
Yes,
okay,
it is it's in the numbering because that's where it's actually very important to the overall plot of the series.
Yeah, because that one takes place in the future, right?
Well, they finally caught up to it at the end of Fast 6. Or Furious 6, or whatever the fuck it is. And Furious 7 is like a reaction to, I guess, what happened in Tokyo Drift. I haven't seen Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I haven't seen any of the movies, but I know a lot of people who really love them. Yeah. And so I hear them talk about it. So I feel like I know a lot about those movies, but the most footage I've ever seen is probably the trailer for Furious 6 that I actually kind of remember seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're good movies. Anyway, let's see. So, Marvel stuff, it's cool. I think... they're planning a 2-part Avengers movie, and
who knows what that even really means?
Right, that could be 2 separate movies for all we know. But I think if anyone's earned the right to do a big 2-part movie, Marvel has probably built to that better than anyone else. And I think they will probably need 2 movies to get through all the story they'll have at that point.
Yeah, because they're holding off that Thanos thing for a while.
Yeah. That was the most scary thing about all this is I look at that number 2019 and I'm like, I don't know where I'll be living in 5 years.
I don't even know if the human race will still exist in 2019. We could all be dead for all we know.
It's crazy to have that dated out. It's like, we will see them fight Thanos when I am 27.
It's like, for all we know, by the time 2019 rolls around, like, Thanos will have actually invaded the planet. Anything could have happened.
He's here. He's like, I want to actually star in Avengers.
God,
none of this CGI bullshit.
I was hanging around the moons of Jupiter, and I saw you guys doing this fucking shit. Nobody even gave me a call.
All right. So let's see. I think that's it for all the news and stuff this week. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about Doctor Who.
Doctor Who?
All right. Let's take this one at a time for now. Let's start with...
Right, because...
The last episode we talked about was Flatline, which was great.
Yeah, really fucking good.
And kind of wound up being the last good episode of the season. Yeah. But let's talk about these. In the Forest of the Night by Frank Bottrell Coyce or something like that. Cottrell Boyce. There it is. He had a funny name, so I remembered that. I don't think we need to say a lot about this episode.
Probably not. I don't remember much, honestly, because I don't think it had a plot.
This episode, it was kind of dull. It was kind of... The plot was kind of nothing. It was sort of there, but it was kind of lazily constructed. You get to the end, it doesn't feel like it was very significant.
I mean, it is one of those plots, I think deliberately, where if the characters had done nothing, nothing would have happened in the episode. Like, if the Doctor just landed and been like, trees, whatever, and just went away, everything would have been fine.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those stories. That being said, I did not find this a bad episode. There were lots of little things in it I enjoyed. And I just wanted to say that up front, because I do think it did some things well. I liked all of the actual material kind of with the Doctor in the episode, because it was some different dynamics where first he's hanging out with that one weird kid who comes onto the TARDIS. Yeah. And I like that moment early on where he's kind of doing his thing where he just is mean to everyone, and then he realizes she actually needs help. And that was just a nice little moment for the Doctor that was different than what we've seen from him in the past in this incarnation. And then there's some of his incarnations with the other children over the course of the episode, and with Clara, and kind of the Clara's arc in this episode of sort of... I remember liking it. What did Clara go through in this episode? She had some discovery at the end.
I feel like I remember my favorite part of the episode I remember was a speech that Danny gave to Clara about hey, I know why you're doing all this shit with the Doctor and going and seeing the universe, but for me, I don't need to do that. Or I don't want to see everything. I want to see less and focus on the things that I have that are important to me.
That was a really good moment. Yeah. That was Clara's realization, is that she keeps trying to kind of in this episode bring Danny into it, be like the Doctor, all of these things, and that was interesting. So Danny had a good moment there.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good moment because there's also I thought it was an interesting moment because I feel like the New Who has tried to kind of make some of those arguments before. Because I think New Who is very fascinated with the sort of the structure that Doctor Who has always had and trying to play it with it in a modern way of asking questions like, well, why the fuck does the companion go with the Doctor? And why does the companion leave? Why would the companion just stay with him? I feel like they've never they've never gotten a very good answer for that. Why would they just leave? They almost had it with Amy and Rory, but then they just fucked it up by bringing them back. So I felt like Danny actually made a really good argument of you don't need to go and see all the universe to have a really satisfying, fulfilling life. Sometimes there are other things that are important that you could embrace.
Yeah. So that was a good moment. On the whole, I'm going to let you take it after this because I have no active dislike of this episode. I thought it was pleasant. It was fine. It was pretty dull. But one of the things I thought it was kind of both interesting and a problem with it is that it's very clearly an episode pitched to children.
Oh, yes.
And I could imagine a kid who's into Doctor Who really liking this one because I think there's some nice
It would be
moments.
the most boring, stupid kid on the planet. It would be like a kid who was way into Fern Gully, man. Who's that kid?
Anyway.
Nobody wants to be that kid.
Yes. So, I thought this was a decent, kind of kid-friendly episode of Doctor Who. Not a lot there for me, but it was okay. Did nothing offensive like the actual finale of the series.
Sure, yeah.
But go ahead and tell us what you thought of in the
I don't think the episode's terrible, but I thought it was really, really boring. And I think for me, the worst parts about the episode are one, the plot's just complete fucking nonsense. There's some part halfway through the episode where the Doctor creates a gravitic anomaly with the screwdriver, and then all these fairies appear, and he talks to the fairies, and they give some bullshit exposition about the trees decided to grow because it's going to be a solar flare, and they're going to protect the planet from the solar flare because trees can control oxygen. It's no, none of that. None of that.
Also, is anyone on Doctor Who aware that we do track solar flares? We would be aware if there was a solar flare coming.
And it's also what a fucking diss to the Earth's magnetic field, the thing that actually protects us from solar flares and has nothing to do with fucking trees. Give the fucking magnetic field some fucking cred, It's been defending all the life on the planet for time immemorial, and we're all oh no, trees will just magically appear, and that's how we're saved from solar flares. And some nonsense about the Doctor giving some exposition about the Tunguska incident, where a fucking asteroid airbursted over a forest over in the Siberian forest. It destroyed a bunch of trees, and something about the trees were protecting the planet. It's no, that was the atmosphere. That had nothing to do with the fucking trees. The trees just happened to be there and all got knocked down by the explosion. They didn't stop the fucking asteroid. So yeah, it was just an episode that had at its core a really cheesy environmentalist message about loving the trees, but all the actual logic of the episode was really bad. The science was really bad, but not in a really offensive kill the moon way, because I don't think the episode never was asserting itself as a scientific authority, so I couldn't get really mad about it. But it was just it just felt stupid. And then at the end there was the thing where the girl comes back and you're what?
Oh right, the sister, because there's
that?
We're confusing the listeners because they don't remember it either.
No. I fucking remember it because when that happened, I was what the fuck?
I'm just going to back up really quickly.
Yeah.
The subplot was that the main little girl in the episode, she had literally lost her older sister. She she didn't die. She just went away. And then at the end, the older sister comes back, and she looks like she's from a totally different family. They must all be adopted.
Yeah. And how she comes back is the little girl and her mom are just walking back to her house, and there's just a really conspicuous bush in their fucking lawn, and then all the fairies appear, and since all the trees are disappearing now because trees they just disappear after they've done their fucking duty of protecting the Earth from solar flares, as we all very well know. The bush disappears along with them. This one, all the other things were trees, but this bush just decided to appear up, and then the girl was just in the bush. So I don't know if the girl was in the bush the whole time, or if she was lost and just happened to come home and was really freaked out because all these trees appeared out of nowhere, or she was actually dead and the fairies brought her back to life. All three of those are possibilities. The episode didn't seem interested in sort of trying to elaborate what the fuck that subplot was or what it was about, but they did find it important enough to be the emotional beat that you end the episode on. So
yeah, whatever. I mean, it's
fairies.
This episode also, I should say, I think Doctor Who for the last couple of years has been a really good-looking show. They've done great work with the effects, great direction, pretty consistently. This was not a particularly well-directed episode. It did not have good effects. It was pretty anemic on a lot of levels.
Also, remember that one part where the girl's lost and the Doctor and everyone are walking through the forest and they run into these two dudes with flamethrowers who are trying to take down the trees, and they're hey, stop that! There was a girl. We're trying to find a girl who's lost, and fuck off, and just keep on fucking shooting flamethrowers at the trees. You're why? What? Why wouldn't you just at least say it's oh, maybe we shouldn't start trying to burn down the forest if there's a girl lost in here. Also, what are we doing trying to burn down this forest? This isn't a practical solution to this at all. Also, where is everybody? We're in the middle of fucking London, one of the most densely populated cities on the planet.
Yeah.
What?
I definitely thought, I thought the first 5-10 minutes of the episode were actually kind of interesting because just setting up the premise, if the premise were like there was this forest on Earth, or what they thought was Earth, and it was just the Doctor and the little girl and Clara and Danny and the kids. Yeah. Like it was established to be at the beginning, and no one else was there, and they didn't know what time they were in or what had happened. That could be kind of an interesting episode.
Yeah, like I thought it was going to be, and this was kind of based off of the trailer that had been on at the end of Flatline.
Yeah,
like that, I thought it was going to be like they were in some sort of like parallel universe or like potential timeline that like something happened in the past, and that London was like everyone in London disappeared or something, and that this was like a force that just grew naturally over the course of like 100 years or something.
And I thought that could have been an interesting direction.
Yeah. Instead of it just being like the force just appeared overnight for no really sufficiently explained reason.
I mean, this is going to be a theme of what we talk about with all 3 of these Doctor Who episodes today. This really felt like a Russell T Davies era Doctor Who to me.
Yeah,
because
definitely this one and the finale, yes.
Yeah, they're very much RTD episodes. This one in that it's clear like they start from the beginning. They bring in all the news channels and all this stuff, and it's just that kind of bigger global context never helps on Doctor Who because the Doctor is bigger than all of that. Yeah. We don't need all that stuff. We have the Doctor.
Yeah,
and especially when you have the Peter Capaldi Doctor, who cares about anything else? He knows everything.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of feeling. Like everything else is insignificant, but they try to make it significant.
Yeah. Also, what the fuck did the William Blake poem have to do with the episode? Because they named it "In the Force of the Night," which is the line from Tiger Tiger. It's like, what?
I don't know.
Because I thought because they had the fucking 15-second scene with the tiger halfway through. It's like the most pathetic attempt to try to generate tension in the plot. Is that why you named it after the Blake poem? It had nothing to do with anything.
The basic takeaway of this episode is that Danny Pink is the greatest human being who ever lived. He can fight tigers with flashlights.
Torches, as we should say.
He is the greatest boyfriend you could ever have.
Yeah.
He is a nice guy. He's a smart and insightful guy.
He can make really compelling philosophical arguments kind of on the fly.
He's utterly selfless. All of these things, and he gets totally shit on in that finale.
Yeah, that's true.
Too bad. Poor Danny Pink.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to come back in the Christmas special somehow, probably, because he needs to be around, or else, Listen couldn't have happened because we met his ancestor.
Clara's pregnant. That's so clear in both those episodes. She is pregnant. That's what she was calling him for at the beginning. Let's transition into those, because we may be spoiling the hell out of this if someone just wanted to listen to our analysis of this episode. Let's talk about the finale, the 2-part finale. I was just going to say, I think it's almost obvious that they're making it so Clara calls him at the beginning of Dark Water, and she has something to tell him, and she's got kind of her life story arranged on the board, and she's trying to say, I'm committed to you now, I love you. She's pregnant. And then at the end she's going to tell the Doctor something, and I don't know why she never just told Danny, hey, you have a son or a daughter, please come back. I know that you killed this little Middle Eastern kid, and that sucks, but you have a responsibility to me now. So
also, what about all the other dead people, man?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I don't quite know how to take this finale in terms of where we're going to discuss it, because I think normal logic would dictate we could talk about this as just one big episode. But I really don't think we can.
Not really, no. It's one of those weird 2-parters where it feels like the second part episode has nothing to do with the first one.
Yeah. So let's just go with overall thoughts on it and then go part by part.
Okay.
Here's my overall thoughts on Dark Water / Death in Heaven. The first 15 minutes are great. Kind of wrapping up this scene where Danny dies and Clara and the Doctor have this big confrontation. That scene in the lava and the scene after that where the Doctor admits how much he cares about her. That is a phenomenal payoff to what we had seen this season so far.
Yeah.
And the last 5 minutes of the season where they meet in the cafe again and they each kind of want to tell each other their own pain and anguish, but can't, and feel like they need to leave each other at this point and try to tell a platitude to the other to placate them. That's a good scene too. Mm-hmm. Everything in the middle I did not like, and I know you disagree on that because you liked a lot more of Dark Water than I did.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Dark Water was a really good setup, because the whole thing was just a setup episode, which makes it really hard to talk about in isolation. But I thought it was a really good setup to a
hypothetical,
to a hopefully really good payoff in the second episode. But since the second episode is really bad, and especially it's really bad in relation to what Dark Water sets up, in the sense that I don't feel like any of the things that happens in the second part followed naturally from what they were setting up. Even just the plot thing of what the Cybermen are doing is just all this stuff with the clouds and the rain and that. It just feels like that's not exactly what like they were building up to, really. And it's just there's like some gap in logic here that we were not exposed to of like all this fucking cloud nonsense. And yeah, like so I thought the setup was good, and I think like the sort of the scenes and the dialogue and stuff in the first episode, in the first part, are really good, and I think Peter Capaldi's really good, and it had a really solid cliffhanger with like, oh, Missy's the master. It's like, okay, cool, that's a good cliffhanger, and then they fucked that characterization up. So it's like the first part's not a good episode because it's like it doesn't have a conclusion, and the conclusion it gets in the second part is the absolute bullshit. So I more or less kind of agree with you now.
Here's what I want
the quality of the first part based on the second part.
All right. Yeah, I hope we can come around at the end and talk about the good things, scant as they are in these two episodes. And about the season as a whole, obviously, because, well, I do think this episode tarred some of the season for me, arc-wise, but we'll get into that later. My problem with Dark Water as an episode, and I've seen it twice now. I watched it on its own last week, and then I watched it as a double feature with Death in Heaven today. And I think, obviously, it does not work as part of the whole, because the whole is bullshit and doesn't work. But I think even on its own as a setup episode, I really just didn't respond to it as a setup episode because it felt like it was paying off on something that had been seeded much more than what had actually been seeded. Because all we'd had going into Dark Water was a couple of shots of Missy and a couple of things of people were dying and going to this weird heaven space where she pranced around with an umbrella, usually. So that's what we had known going in. But
just one scene was Seb.
One scene was Seb.
He's a really good character.
No, he's not.
I
hate Seb.
I thought he was funny.
I found him so annoying. I found Seb really annoying. He feels like one of those Stephen Moffat characters on this or on Sherlock that I just want to punch in the face.
I think because I don't disagree that I want to punch him in the face, but I don't think that makes him a bad character.
Okay. In any case, but within Dark Water, like the weird thing to me is that most of that episode is trying to fool us about this is really heaven. And you can talk to the dead, and there's this weird thing going on, and we know that's not true.
Yeah,
we know it's building up something. Obviously, it's bullshit. But the weird thing is that it's like this has become some kind of socially ingrained system. There's this whole 3W corporation, and they've been collecting dead bodies, and apparently this is a widespread thing because of the amount of bodies the master or the mistress or whatever the fuck we're calling her.
Just call her Missy for this episode.
I'm going to call her Missy. Okay, so however much Missy has collected. So it's this whole thing, and it's weird that I don't know. Obviously, it was supposed to be just happening in the present because in the present day. But Clara never knew about 3W. None of this stuff had happened. Like this would clearly have colored human society in some way. And moreover,
that's exactly what I'm saying when like the second part does not follow from the first. That it's like because like if you at the very end of the first part. You do see that it looks like it's maybe like modern day London, but it could have not been.
Yeah,
because you only see like a little bit of it, and they basically wanted to have like the exterior shot of St. Paul's Cathedral to have the reference to the invasion, because that's what happened in the invasion is Cybermen were in front of the St. Paul's Cathedral. So they obviously wanted to do that. So I was like, okay, probably this is actually taking place like 300 years in like humanity's future or something, and like Missy has just been collecting people throughout history or something.
Which would have been more interesting.
Yeah, it would have made sense in some way. But yeah, instead, you have this weird, like, this organization has been here the whole time, even though this whole facility seems like way more advanced than anything that modern day civilization would have. How it's in St. Paul's Cathedral doesn't make any
goddamn sense.
Yeah, did they just clear out St. Paul's Cathedral and just fucking put all that shit in there? Like, what?
Yeah, and so, but it really does, that Dark Water episode feels, because that's the questions you have that obviously don't go answered in Death in Heaven is like, why the episode is titled Dark Water. It's about this water substance that only shows organic matter. Why do you need to hide the Cybermen? Like, that's a question you have.
Clothes are made out of organic matter. It's the same problem I've always had with the Terminator logic of like why people don't have clothes when they time travel. It's like, no, like fucking most clothes are made out of organic matter. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, anyway,
nonsense.
Let's just go with what they fucking said.
It's like, what do you think hair is?
Yeah. I know. Anyway, but yeah, so there's this Dark Water. They're obviously wanting to fool people, but what people? None of that really becomes clear. The Doctor has a line in Death in Heaven where he says it was a scheme on rich people. I don't really get that.
Well, I think it was supposed to be that rich people will like pay 3W to like put them in that tomb in St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yeah.
And
anyway, but what I was going to say about just if you watch Dark Water on its own or as part of the whole, I guess, because these are problems with all of it. But so it's this issue where it really does feel like this was the finale to a season that had been arcing to that in some way. Like, this felt like the first episode of a finale Russell T Davies would write, where he would have had characters say 3W over and over through the season.
And like, there would have been like at the end of a couple of episodes, the Doctor would have been like someone would have like vaguely referred to like the 3 words that like that nobody wants to know, and he's like, what?
Yeah. And I want to be clear, I'm glad they didn't do that. I think this season's approach to arcing was good, except it doesn't make sense with where they began and started. Stephen Moffat wrote and coordinated, because he's the showrunner, a middle, 9 episodes of this season that were for a season with a totally different beginning and ending. Because just the way, I think even the way the character arcs resolve and the character arcs in Death in Heaven are so clearly tied into the weird plot mechanics.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. This is 2 different seasons grafted together to me, and it's pretty jarring when you think about that. If you take those middle 9 on their own, it's all fine. But you put that 1, 11, and 12 at the the bookends, and it's just really awkward, and it's a problem. And that kind of bothered me in Dark Water and Dark Water also, I don't think it's a bad episode. Like, I don't not enjoy it while I'm watching it, because it does some tension well. It has some interesting imagery and stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of it just kind of bothered me, because there was always this sinking suspicion of that, all right, they really have to pay off on this for any of this to work. Like, I think a good comparison, and I'm going to draw this discussion, because you just have to. It's the high water mark. Right. You go to the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bangs. Yeah. Bang. The Pandorica Opens is a setup episode, but it's also a setup episode that is actively paying off on things we already knew about. Yeah. And it has big character moments. It has the Doctor giving the big speech. It has moments of triumph and defeat that are interesting on their own. And then the Big Bang takes all that further. This, Dark Water at its best was only ever just a setup episode.
Yeah.
So, and then because the setup goes literally nowhere, who cares?
Yeah, it's a thing that I didn't necessarily have the problems that you have with the arcing with the season. I think the way they resolve the character arcs in the second episode, the second part, is it's complete nonsense. But I kind of like the vibe I got from Dark Water at the beginning, that it didn't necessarily feel like, I guess more like not at the beginning of the episode, but once they get into the tomb.
Yeah,
is that it felt like it was another episode of Doctor Who that happened to have some more significant tie-ins to with the Danny character, because Danny died, but it felt like when they materialized in that tomb, that it's they materialized in the episode for Doctor Who,
right.
And this was just going to be a Doctor Who adventure, and I thought it was oh, that's kind of a cool idea to keep the vibe that the rest of the season had of not having overarching plot lines, but just having some character development, and just focusing on each episode being an episode of Doctor Who, which is kind of how I want it to be. And so I thought that was interesting and worked well in that episode. And then it was the next episode just went fucking crazy. That's the only way I can describe Death in Heaven. It's just it just went goddamn insane, which is appropriate for its featured villain, who's just just went fucking insane.
Yeah, well, it's just this tough thing where, and we'll get into all the problems with Death in Heaven.
Yeah.
But, overall, taking this as a 2-parter where it does get very big and apocalyptic and all these other things like Doctor Who likes to get at the end, you can't have it both ways. You cannot have a season that is episode-by-episode driven and character-driven and have that kind of finale and have it work. Even if Death in Heaven had been better written, had been a better version of what it was aspiring to be, I just don't think that kind of storytelling can work unless you're seeding it. At the same time, you can't have all the good things Series 8 did if you're actively trying to seed these things always.
Yeah, the finale should have been a lot smaller. It should have just... the rest of it should have just been a fucking episode of Doctor Who that also just, used the normal plot of, a relatively normal-scaled episode of Doctor Who to resolve the character arcs. Yes. And, the heightened scales for it being a finale, all you needed for that was, Danny being killed, so you can use that to resolve your character arc, and then you also have a returning villain with your fucking cliffhanger. That's all you need. You don't need the next episode to then just be oh, the entire planet's being invaded, and there's on a plane, and you have this huge nonsensical action thing where the Doctor's falling out of the sky, and the effects aren't very good and not particularly believable, and you're just the whole time wondering what the flying fuck is going on anymore.
Yeah, let's talk about Death in Heaven. I thought this was an embarrassingly bad episode of Doctor Who. Just Doctor Who caught with its pants down. It's just awful. Every moment that. I don't... as you say, it went crazy, and there's that level, so nothing about it makes sense. The plot just jumps around wherever it wants to go, like a fucking 12-year-old wrote it.
Yeah.
And And within that, I think Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman are still good because at this point you can't do anything to make them bad. Mm-hmm. You can put them in scenarios that make me uncomfortable and are wrong for this show, which they do a lot in this episode, but you can't make them bad. So there's that maybe keeps your interest in some level. But, Missy is just terrible. It's
yeah.
And as we were talking about this after we watched the episode, it's so clearly Stephen Moffat trying to riff on The Dark Knight for me. And I just watched that movie again, and everything she does in this episode is something the Joker did in The Dark Knight, and all of her little ticks are that kind of Joker kind of thing. And it's also stuff that he had Moriarty do in the awful Sherlock episodes that Moriarty is in. And I just don't get it. If Stephen Moffat wants to go write a Batman movie where he can have the Joker, DC is hiring.
Yeah, but to be fair, it is the same basic characterization that RTD used for John Sims' Master. So it's
it is, and
it's not all Stephen Moffat's fault. They should have just completely course corrected because that was an awful place to take the Master. But it does feel like there's this weird trend for this and Sherlock where
but I also think
these really shitty, crazy villains that are just really, really bad.
And here's the thing. I have not watched the John Sim Master episodes in a while. I've seen his last one, The End of Time, a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've only seen that 3-part finale he's in once.
Yeah, I've at least seen that one twice, maybe 3 times.
But all I'll say is that I think Stephen Moffat pushed it even further here. I think there's at least in the writing once in a while in those Master episodes, and I know it at least happens in End of Time Part 2, where that character got some level of grounding once in a while, and he was crazy and nuts, but he also had a much clearer plan too. He wasn't just completely batshit insane. He wanted to fucking kill people and murder and rule the universe. I get that.
The Master Race.
It's stupid, but it's a fucking plan. It's really stupid. Missy makes no sense as a character.
It's a plan based entirely on a pun, Jonathan.
It is. Missy's plan makes no sense. She wants to she wants to prove she can. It's the Joker thing from The Dark Knight. She wants to prove she can pull the Doctor down to our level.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. Is you can be as bad as I am. And even then, that's not built to or developed well. It doesn't really make sense. The mechanics of it don't make sense, and she's just going around singing songs and having weird /fic kisses with the Doctor and pretending she's a robot and
making pop culture references.
Yes, and flying down like she's Mary Poppins. Yep. Probably giving
and not shrinking people to kill them, which I still think is we need to get that back.
You have to explain that.
Okay, yeah, the Master in the classic series, the way his trademark was that he would shrink people down, and that's how they would die.
Yeah,
which is a super fucked up way to kill people.
And I think part of the problem is that if Stephen Moffat wants to write this kind of crazy Joker character, just make a new character and do that. And then I think it's fine, because we can just put that aside, and you can probably flesh the character out more, too. But when you're doing it
it probably won't be fine, because it'll still be awful. But
still be awful.
It won't, continue to taint this. These movies, to be fair, is not necessarily, in the scope of Doctor Who, has been a character that mostly has been done really poorly. But, when he started, the Master was really cool.
Yeah, and I just think the Master in here and Moriarty in Sherlock is just because you're putting it on these characters who they have nothing to do now with the names you're using, so why use the name? That's my question.
Yeah. And not only do they have nothing to do, they're the exact opposite characterization of the original versions, because the Master was originally designed to be Moriarty. He was designed off of that archetype. And so they're both the same kind of villain, which is that they are really cool, they're really calculating, they are not fucking psychos. They maybe are, sociopathic in that way that they don't have remorse or empathy for people, but they're not just completely crazy, and they have a cool kind of rapport with the hero of this almost kind of mutual respect. But that does not stem from this just utter this kind of fantastical lunacy. It's a kind of madness that doesn't exist in reality. That people aren't crazy like this. This is just nonsense.
And I think even on that level, with this kind of, abject lunacy, it's all these scenarios where I don't even understand what the logic of how that lunacy operates on other people is. So there's this scene in Death in Heaven where she's tied up, which, hey, great job, unit, put her right next to the TARDIS. Yeah. I was sure she was going to steal the TARDIS.
Yeah, and, let's put, this criminal who, the unit has had huge, because, the Master came from the Third Doctor era, which is the same era that the unit comes from. So, they should fucking understand... putting the Master in handcuffs isn't going to do shit. Come on, like, do something at least creative with how you're fucking binding her up or something.
Yeah. So there's that. But they put her there, and the scarf... I think of her still as Scarf Girl, because that's who she was in the 50th special. Now she's Bowtie Girl.
Yeah.
So...
Doctor Who fangirl.
I will say, I kind of liked the moment where we realized Matt Smith is now entrenched as a part of Doctor Who history. Bow ties are cool.
Yeah.
Is now a reference to a prior Doctor. That was kind of an interesting moment. Of like, that's history now.
Yeah.
We're on to something new very much. But anyway, Bowtie slash... I'm just going to call her the stupid girl, because that's what she is.
I just think of her as the fangirl, because that's like what her character is.
I'm going to call her the stupid girl because of what she does in this episode. So the stupid girl is standing there, and the mistress, Missy... I just don't know what to call her. Missy does the thing where she sings, and then she gets her to come over, and the stupid girl just comes over because nothing bad can come of talking to a psychopath right on. She has not seen The Dark Knight, where this exact same scenario played out.
The funniest part about it, too, is that, like, she's so resistant to it, but she still gives in. Like, she's so resistant to it that it completely defies belief that she would ultimately cave in, because it's like the episode spends, like, literally, like, 3 or 4 minutes of her, like, inching towards Missy, and Missy's like saying another line of dialogue, and her being like, no, and then like taking another step forward. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. So this is an example where, as you say, even she seems to be aware that she shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
But she does it anyway. So this is a moment where Missy's lunacy does not... It correlates to an event where she gets the stupid girl, and kills her.
Yeah.
So there's an outcome, but the lunacy going to that outcome, nothing makes sense. The lunacy feels like detached from everything. Again, it's ripping off that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker is sitting there and he gets the cop to come over, and then he gets the cop at knife point and kills him, and all that happens. But there, that psychopath has been a little better established, and we understand how that lunacy leads to this character decision. It's just...
And then also, like, I feel like the character of the cop in Dark Knight, like, you feel like, oh, that's a guy who thinks he's in a position of power,
right? And
so he's making a stupid decision because he doesn't understand what's going on. Whereas, like, Fangirl obviously knows that she's not really in control here. Like, it's the fucking Master. Like, and I should say that historically the Master's character has had, like, an ability to, like, use hypnosis to control people, but there's no implication of that whatsoever. They don't do the whole, like, you will obey me thing that he used to do, because they don't want to make the Master cool anymore.
Yeah.
Which is also disappointing, because in this season, I thought they did a fun thing with the Doctor, which they kind of brought back some of his, like, weird mental powers he had, and the sleep and shit, because they're, like, inferior beings.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of, when I realized that they were doing the Master thing again, I was like, oh, great. She's going to have, like, the cool hypnosis shit again. That's, like, really kind of corny, but also really awesome now. Nope. They didn't do it at all.
Yeah, I think... It's so disappointing. And I think the other problem is that when you tear all of Missy's lunacy away, she's totally pathetic. She's cowering. There's nothing... She just kind of fears the Doctor. Like, that's part of the problem. And this is why I think this has convinced me they should never do a female Doctor. Like, I am dead setting in stone.
Yeah, like, I've always... This. Like, I think it's an idea that theoretically could work, but I don't see anyone actually pulling off.
Because here's the problem, is how do they characterize Missy as feminine in here? She's hypersexualized, and when she actually goes up against the Doctor and she's had her lunacy and plans stripped away, she's weak and cowering. Because that's what women are, weak and cowering. Yeah.
And for me, it's Doctor also, like, a problem where, like, you need to find some way... And this is this is still, like, tricky with the Master, but you need to find some way to, like, make me believe that, like, underneath she's, like, the same... person, and that the gender is just like a thing that her appearance is, but does not necessarily like define her as a not human being, but as a Time Lord or / Time Lady. Yeah. It's very difficult to do that now because their whole species name is gendered. But if you would want, if the Doctor regenerated into a female body, that you'd still have the effect of like being able to see the other Doctors in the same scenario saying more or less the same lines, but like in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I feel like that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's a problem with the Master where it's like, it's kind of the truth of John Sim Master as well as, like, I don't see any of, like, Roger Delgado's performance in there, like, I don't see any Anthony Ainley, like, that character's so lost because they just went a completely different direction for that character for no reason. It's also a problem in this episode specifically because I feel like they rely really heavily on, like, the audience knowing who the Master is as a character, and I feel like I don't know what that is anymore, you know? Like, I feel like, because they change so much about the character when they brought him for the New Who, where they like really went heavy on the he's the Doctor's friend from his childhood and stuff like that. But I feel like that never.
They had the whole Sound of Drums thing too.
Yeah, I feel like that whole friend thing was kind of a part of the season 3 finale, but they kind of lost it at the very end in some ways. And then in End of Time, I feel like that's almost not there at all anymore, and he's just kind of a villain. And then in this, they make it a really big deal again. But then, and if you go back into the classic series, it's only like that relationship is only like very vaguely alluded to in like a couple of episodes, and is mostly just between the chemistry between John Pertwee and Roger Delgado. But it was like super understated and not elaborated on at all. Just like that characterization is not one that's like really firmly rooted in the show's history, so it doesn't have like any effect upon me when you think it really should, because I'm the motherfucker who's seen every single episode of Doctor Who, and if I'm not getting any cumulative effect about you bringing back like the third most important villain in the entire show's history, like just behind the Cybermen and the Daleks, like that's really disappointing that you have 50 fucking years of history for the show. And if you can't deliver on bringing back a character like that and making me feel like when I watch this episode, it's like, this is the coolest thing ever, it's really disappointing.
Yeah, I think you could use that term for a lot of things in this episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Such as, there's a semi-interesting scene at the beginning of this episode where Clara is being aimed at by a Dalek with a gun. Cybermen. Whatever. They're the same thing.
The Cybermen nowadays might as well be Daleks, you're right.
Whatever. I mean, and the thing is, they've made the Cyberman design more interesting, but they're so boring in this episode.
Yeah, they don't use them very well.
Anyway.
Then they had, like, the idea of, like, Danny getting turned into a Cyberman could have been used so well in, like, a completely different episode.
Anyway, so the Cybermen are going to kill Clara, and she talks her way out of it by saying, no, there never was a Clara Oswald. That's a front. I'm the Doctor. And then they make a huge deal out of it because the theme song...
That's the stinger for the cold open.
Yeah. Not just the stinger, but the theme song switches the roles where Jenna Coleman is first.
I completely forgot about that. And they changed the credits face, which is super fucked. That's so fucked. You don't do that. I like Clara as a character, but she doesn't get credits face. Nobody gets credits face except for the Doctor. That's fucking nonsense.
Yes.
God, I completely forgot that they did that after all the other nonsense in the episode.
I'm actually really curious how that's legal, because, like, isn't it a contracted thing that Peter Capaldi gets first billing? Like, doesn't he have, like, how do you switch that? Maybe he just said that's okay because it's a fun little thing, but it's weird. And yeah, it's stupid because the companion, doesn't matter who the companion is, they shouldn't get credits face. But then we go into...
They should have, like, gone, like... The whole 9 yards and changed the title of the show to Dr. Clara, like when the logo came up. But it's like who crossed out and like Clara put in with like Sharpie.
That'd be great. But then the rest of the episode does nothing with that.
And that's the reason why I forgot that happened, is because it's like once Danny, as a Cyberman, like takes her to a graveyard for no reason whatsoever, that's never alluded to again.
Yeah. So... It's like Stephen Moffat was like, this is cool, and then he wrote the rest of the script and was like,
it
oh,
reminds
fuck, I
me
wrote
a lot
that.
of like shit like in the beginning of Wedding of River Song where they have like all of time compressed.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like, all that does is clutter up like the whole rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I just don't know. This is a rough one.
I forgot about the credits face thing.
So, I mean, it's
really rough.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rest of this because, and I don't even know where to go because just all of it's a mess. Everything doesn't work. I guess I want to go to... I mean, there's all these things that... You talk about the credits face thing and the Clara as the Doctor thing not paying off, but also all that stuff where the Doctor is made president, which doesn't make sense. And
all the whole time, I was just thinking in the back of my head, it's like, is the Doctor still technically Lord President of Gallifrey? Because he got turned into Lord President of Gallifrey as well. And I was kind of disappointed they never made a reference to that, because it's like... Wait, this isn't the only time he's been a president.
Yeah. It's just...
Yeah, that president... This is such a fucking Stephen Moffat finale. Like, it's just like all these like weird ideas that just do not congeal and just get lost in all this mess of like the fucking Clara is the Doctor thing. Which is like a premise that you could build a lot of an episode around, you know? Or like, the Doctor is the president of Earth to defend this alien invasion is a premise that you could build like a whole half of like an episode sort of elaborating on that and using that in fun ways. And this episode just kind of like drops them and it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, let's move on to turning Danny into a Cyberman and not using that in an interesting way. Where it's like, let's have the Master meet in the episode and not use that in an interesting way. Or really go anywhere with it. Or let's just bring up Gallifrey out of nowhere, even though we didn't build that up over for the whole fucking season.
Alright, I'm going to talk about what would be my biggest complaint with this episode.
Okay.
And that's... And I just think this is a problem both because I think tonally this goes against what Doctor Who is, and on an arc level I think it betrays a lot of what this season did well. Is the whole wrap-up where we have this kind of dual thing where Danny's been turned into a Cyberman, and he wants to have his emotions turned off. He's basically asking to be killed. So we're already getting pretty dark.
Although, it really kind of bugged me that he kept on being like, turn on my emotional inhibitor, instead of like, well, just kill me. Why would you want to be turned into a Cyberman? Just fucking kill him. It's not nice, but that's a better alternative than being turned into an emotionless killing machine that's connected to a cyber hive mind,
It'd be like in a zombie movie if a dude had his leg broken and it was like, just let the zombie bite me. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really weird turn of logic.
Yeah. So that's weird. So we have that, and that builds to Clara having to basically mind wipe, kill, whatever you want to call it, Danny.
Yeah.
There's a dark moment. Then we have this other side of that where after this horrible resolution with the kind of arcs of the season come, we'll have to talk about that separately. Yeah. Clara wants to kill the Master and makes the Doctor do it, so now the Doctor has to, and obviously he doesn't, but we're led to believe that he has to murder the Master, and basically they're standing there just executing her. Both of these things, I think, are so wildly out of place on Doctor Who. Not even in the ballpark of what's acceptable for the show.
It was something that, I was watching it, and, the whole time I was just thinking, well, where's the part where they're going to obviously have the Doctor turn and be like, oh no, I figured out we don't need to do this. We can fix Danny, blah, blah, blah. I know how there's a way to reverse the cyber process or something with the cloud or some nonsense. Or, with Missy, it's I thought the whole time that, when he said, he was going to kill her, that he was just doing that to get the thing away from Clara and he was just going to destroy it. Because it's the whole season has been building up this question of, is the Doctor a good man? Is he, morally good or, what? It's, his sort of deceptive nature and stuff like that. Is that a bad thing? Is his sort of callous attitude towards death in some ways? Does that prevent him from being a respectable hero or something? There's some interesting ideas, and I think other episodes have done interesting things with that, Into the Dalek. But this one, it needed to have the Doctor be, turn around and be the hero at the end that he needs to be, which felt was what the whole season was building up to, was that the Doctor at no point has the Doctor turned into, a villain. It's just, we need to understand his morality, and especially, uncover that a bit with this new incarnation, because the Doctor, new Doctor Who has gone really dark in a lot of ways, and so it's we need to sort of strip that back and sort of figure out what is the moral center of the show, and they never did that.
No, we found out what the moral center of the show was, is that he lets his companion kill her boyfriend, and then he executes an enemy. Fuck this.
But except you don't even then you kind of pull a Kill the Moon or Amazing Spider-Man 2, where you use that cheap writing trick of we're going to have the Doctor do this, but we can't actually have the Doctor do this. And as soon as you're confronted with this when you're writing, you should know, I fucked up and need to reverse this. But the Stephen Moffat puts the Doctor in a place where for the plot he wants to tell, he needs the character to do something, but the character would never do that thing. And so then he just has this, in a way, this literal Deus Ex Machina, where the fucking Brigadier turned into a Cyberman shoots Missy, and she evaporates, probably is not actually dead, and then he just flies off into the sky and just leaves, and I was sitting there the whole time being what the fuck just happened? That was the most nonsense bit of plotting I've seen on this show maybe ever. It's so just what the fuck?
I just don't get it, because that moment where Clara is aiming the screwdriver at him, I agree with what you're saying. I kept waiting for the Doctor to say, I've got it, I figured it out. Because they're setting it up as a contrast, where all season the Doctor has been confronted with impossible choices, and he's made the dark choice.
Yeah.
Because he has to. And this is a moment where it's another one of those, but I thought this was the point where he was supposed to transcend it. Mm-hmm. That's his arc this season, right? I was watching the same show. But even then,
I feel some of the arc was that, he didn't necessarily make, the dark choice. He made the choice he had to make, but this was not a situation where this wasn't Mummy on the Orient Express, where it's there's no other choice. There's nothing else that you could possibly do in this situation. It's like the people die and the Doctor has to move on in that episode. But I feel like that's one of those episodes where at the end you understand that it's like there's more going on there. Just because he's being callous doesn't mean he's not being caring, and you have to recognize that the whole episode he's been risking his life and doing everything he can possibly do to solve the situation and save as many people as he possibly can. Then this episode, it should be that, like, Clara does not understand that. Like, Clara has, like, I feel like as a character for a lot of the season, she's been taken in by, like, the more sort of manipulative side of the Doctor, and that's part of what the thematic stuff of Flatline was, that she's really good at the, like, manipulative stuff. She's learned that side of the Doctor, but maybe she hasn't fully come to understand the moral consequences that go with that yet. And that's what this should have been, is the Doctor showing that's like, you people are giving in too easily. There's a better solution. We have to find a better solution. Like, at the very least, you kill Danny, you don't turn him into a Cyberman. At the very least, like, that's not a nice conclusion. It would still have been, like, an obvious, logical, better alternative that you don't even need to be, like, as smart as the Doctor to figure it out.
Yeah. And I just, again, the tonal thing really does bother me because it's, you know, just bringing it to this point where these characters are being forced to just basically murder people and do this weird shit at the end. It feels so out of sync with what Doctor Who is and has been this season, and has, I mean, and this has been a dark season, but I think there's a difference between being mature in how you approach themes and just being dark for the sake of, we want to make things sad and punch you in the gut.
Yeah.
That's all this is. I don't get it. And it's tough because part of me also suspects that the Christmas special is just going to be about reversing all this.
Probably, yeah.
In which case, what does it matter? Because
is it confirmed that Clara is going to be back for the Christmas special? I thought I saw that somewhere.
She's in it. But it's... And Nick Frost's Santa Claus, which, by the way, best thing about the episode, that is brilliant casting. Brilliant. I am excited for that.
Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be... Hopefully that will be one of those things that this season has done where it sounds like an episode idea that should be good but is going to be done terribly but is actually done well.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Anyway, what were we saying? So it does seem like the kind of thing where I do like the end of the episode where we end up with the Doctor and Clara, and I think if this finale were genuinely good, that would be an okay place where you could leave the Doctor and Clara's relationship.
Yeah.
It would be sad and it would be thought-provoking, but I think in the right way.
Yeah, it's kind of like where those characters need to end. If the Doctor had done the whole turnaround thing, I think it would have been a really fulfilling, like, conclusion to an episode.
Yeah. But, you know, it's not... You can't leave it like that because of the way the episode actually turns out.
Yeah.
It's bad. And I don't get what the intentions were here. It felt like Stephen Moffat came up with some good ideas for, 10 episodes worth of the season, and then realized he had to tie some things together, and had no idea how to do absolutely any of it. And so he just threw shit at a wall. Nothing actually stuck.
Tried to make the classic mistake that I think New Who does of, like, trying to make their finales really big, and that, like, never works. Like, that's always... I just feel like...
It's worked once. But it never...
Yeah, but even then, like, I don't know. I feel like when I go back and watch Pandora Opens and The Big Bang, I don't think those episodes work as well on, like, multiple viewings. As, like, there's a lot of, I think, troubling Deus Ex Machina in the plotting there. Like, I think they're still good episodes.
They're good, but they're good, and here's the thing.
Yeah.
While there is Deus Ex Machina going on in those, here's why Season 5 works in the way I think Series 8 ultimately did not, if you're taking it as a season, and the way they arced it, they do want you to take it as a season.
Sure, yeah.
You have, for one, the plot side of it is seated in a way that is more significant. So the cracks in time in Season 5 come to the forefront in Episode 5 of that season. And you know what the threat is. It's not just this thing in the back of the room where it's, like, totally vague.
Yeah, because, like, Rory gets consumed by the crack. Yeah.
And that comes in later in the season. So there's this progression that's going on there, and it's real. But at the same time, they have these individual episodes that are really good, and they have this character arc between the Doctor and Amy that is incredibly poignant and well done, and you get to Pandora Opens and Big Bang. I want to keep... I don't know why saying Big Bangs. That would be like an 80s Doctor Who episode. Yeah. Anyway, where all of that stuff really does come together. Where even if there are, plot machinations that don't make total sense, there's payoff on both sides of that, and those payoffs are totally linked. Like, what I love about The Big Bang, and this is one I've rewatched several times too, is that a lot of the answers to that season tie the plot mechanics in with the character development. They're totally one and the same. It's what I think Stephen Moffat wanted to do here, where the Master's plan and everything it pushes them towards makes the Doctor realize what he's gone through this season. That's the intended focus of this episode. Is to get us to that point. But you look at something like the Big Bang and contrast it, that does work there because, what the Doctor does, going into the Pandorica, shooting up into space, disappearing, and then Amy kind of calling him back, that calls on the kind of the fairy tale tone of the season, on the arcs that have been building up, all of that. It's not perfect, and I don't think you would ever claim it's perfect, but there's emotional resonance and narrative resonance that exists there because they put the goddamn legwork in. Yeah. This is one where they did not put any of the legwork in on that plot side. They put all the legwork in on the character side, and then they let the finale be completely driven by the non-existent plot legwork.
Yeah.
And it ruins... It does not... I mean, it doesn't go back and, make the other episodes bad. I'm not saying that. But there's no actual payoff to what these characters were going through this year. And that's a bummer to me, because I think you could have... if you look at the beginning moments of Dark Water, and Clara losing Danny, and threatening the Doctor, and then the Doctor forgiving it and saying, did you think I cared for you so little that betrayal would change things? That moment is the exact right punch to pay off their relationship. Because it's based on, who we know these characters to be. And then the rest of this two-parter doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter who they were, doesn't matter what happened, doesn't matter what they went through. It's its own just clusterfuck. And at the end, it kind of tries to tell you this mattered to them, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird that's, by far the best scene in, this whole finale was, the second scene, It's you have the cold open, and then you come in, and it's, the whole volcano scene. That volcano scene is by far the best thing in this whole finale. I think that all that stuff is fucking awesome. And then slowly it just, everything goes crazy.
Also,
really yeah.
Danny got killed by a car. I want to stress this. Ultimately, Danny got killed walking across the street.
Yeah.
That kind of thing only works dramatically if you actually deal with the, randomness of death. And you have the characters reflect on that. They don't.
Yeah, because it was an interesting idea for, half of a second, but then they just kind of didn't want to deal with it. Where Clara, the reason why she calls the Doctor in the first place is because she has that whole speech to her grandma about it's too normal, it's too common, and she can't deal with it. That's a really interesting idea. I don't know if Doctor Who ever would really be able to handle it, but it's still an interesting idea that maybe would work in an audio drama or something. But yeah, it is a weird you've touched on something that you're not really prepared to deal with when you just have Danny just get hit by a car walking across the street.
Yeah. And again, we want to compare this to Season 5. Rory dies in a substantial way, tied into the themes of the season, and then when the finale becomes Rory-centric in some ways, it's tying back into things we already know and paying off on everyone's arc, the Doctor, Rory, and Amy. And this is one where Danny just died randomly, and that... Again, people do die randomly, obviously, but if you're doing that in a dramatic context, you have to talk about it, and they didn't. It was just Stephen Moffat started writing the episode, realized, oh, Danny needs to be dead for this episode. I forgot to tell one of my other writers to do it. He gets hit by a car. There we go. This is what it felt like to me, ultimately. When you go back and look at what the finale actually does, that's what it is.
Yeah, and there was a part of me that was thinking that, I didn't really think they were going to do this, but it would have been really funny. Is if in the second part they show that part of Missy's plan was to have Danny die, which I think it actually was, but I don't know how she's supposed to account for that. But just have go flash back to when Danny gets hit and have Missy be driving the car would have been fucking hilarious. Obviously they wouldn't have done it, but they should have. They might as well have done it. It would have been the best part of this whole fucking second part.
And she would have been wearing a clown costume or something.
No, in the same ridiculous getup that she has on, just driving a fucking Volkswagen or something. I think that would have been hilarious.
So let's talk about some things that were never accounted for in the plot.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so this was all Earth based, but pretty much everyone we saw die was on other planets and in other time periods.
Yeah,
and sometimes they were robots.
Yeah, so that is a very good point. Then Deep Breath, the first time this comes up, is you have a clockwork robot gets taken to the Promised Land. So I don't know how any of that's supposed to work, because it's supposed to be that she somehow uploads people's consciousness into this Time Lord hard drive or whatever, and then you upgrade the body, and then you download the thing like Cybermen from cyberspace. Well, I didn't know anything of that. It was really fucking... It does their plan doesn't really make sense either way, because the rain stuff, it's just that...
We'll talk about that.
None of that stuff makes sense. But then the next time it comes up is Into the Dalek, and that takes place way out into space. It's a human at least, but you're like way out in space fighting Daleks off of some like random planet. Like it's definitely nowhere near Earth.
Also, she dies inside a Dalek.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good point because when she dies, she's shrunk down. Yeah, and like she gets her consciousness somehow gets taken. At least like the next time that happens is in Caretaker. At least that one makes sense because that's like contemporary modern day.
Sure.
And the dude just gets zapped by the one thing. And I think is that the last time that happens?
Last time that happens in Flatline, we have one scene with Missy looking at Clara. Oh, we have to talk about that. Right. There's this whole payoff that Stephen Moffat apparently was so excited for. He has been seeding since Clara's introduction on this fucking show. Yes. Since Bells of St. John with a different doctor and all of that, so we get another nice Matt Smith flashback here.
Yeah.
So that someone gave Clara the number, and this is going to be significant somehow. Missy did it for
obviously, yeah.
No reason. Mm-hmm. Like, she just said, because I knew Clara wouldn't leave you or something.
Yeah.
That's every companion.
Like, yeah, like it has nothing to... And I don't really fully understand what that's meant to have to do with, like, the Cybermen thing. Like, what does Clara do? It's, like, the only thing that's, like, Clara does that's important, which, again, is kind of completely incidental, is that Danny gets killed, and so she wants to bring the doctor to get Danny, and that's how the doctor gets, like, involved in it in the first place. That's, like... Again, unless you did the thing where Missy is the one driving the car, or she has someone driving the car. Again, in my head, it's like Missy behind the wheel of some like modern day like Subaru or something, just like cackling. She's just like, and he hits the car. It would have been fucking hilarious. But yeah, unless she's the one driving the car that kills Danny, there's no way to get that to work. And even then, it's like the only way that would work is if she somehow set up Clara to get involved with Danny in the first place, unless you can just assume that Clara's going to fall incredibly madly in love and do all that crazy shit. But yeah, it doesn't really... There's no real logic there that, like, gels all of that together.
Because then, okay, so that all makes no sense, and that's this big overrunning plot thread. Then you have Misty's actual plan, which is Cyberman army can use the whole human race, and it's going to give it to the Doctor, and wants the Doctor to go conquer the galaxy. And unless he conquers it, humans will die. But the Doctor doesn't conquer it. He gives it to Danny. So the Master must have been lying, I guess.
Yeah.
Nothing makes sense.
Yeah, especially because it was like her. So her plan was. So there's like kind of two parts of this. There's a superficial plan, which is I think the thing that the Cybermen were into. That like she just embroiled, but she had ulterior motives. Is that you let's try to break this down. You create this bullshit thing about the 3 words, which apparently that's what galactic background radiation is, because like it's supposed to be like the white noise on your TV, which also like that's like a comparison point that nobody's going to understand anymore because you don't have white noise because we don't have antennas on TV anymore. Me out. But like what white noise actually is just like residual background energy from the Big Bang. So we know what it is. So it's like the explanation is bullshit. But they're saying it's like, oh, white noise is actually the voices of the dead saying, don't cremate me. So somehow Missy set that up with like all that and set up this company, 3W, based on the 3 words, which is just a weird and convoluted way to name a company and does not make any sense. But it creates that and then like uses that to sucker rich people into like paying them money to entomb them in that facility where you are also put into a Cyberman exoskeleton to, like, preserve your dead body, presumably. And, like, but she uses that to also, like, upload their stuff into the Time Lord hard drive.
Which we never know how the hell she's doing that.
Yeah, but that's just... But like, if, they're paying her money, like, that makes sense in some way that, like, at some point in the process she would have done something that would have uploaded their consciousness to this hard drive.
Doesn't explain all the other times we see
that. But this is where it completely falls apart then, is that the other part of the explanation is that the Missy / the Master still has her TARDIS, or still has a TARDIS somehow. This episode does in no way really explain how the Master is involved in this and how the Master escaped Gallifrey. Presumably, Stephen Moffat will not explain that in trying to explain it at some point in another finale. But she used her TARDIS to like set this up somehow throughout all of human history, including like I guess like super far in the human future, because you have to get into the Dalek lady gets fucking sucked up somehow. Where somehow she uses her TARDIS to set it up so that in the past, like all of every human soul or consciousness ever is uploaded into this hard drive somehow. But then everyone's bodies are buried into the ground. Now, here's the part that makes no fucking sense, especially for Danny. Like, super for Danny, is that then there's these clouds that happen that they make a metaphor at first about, like, the digital cloud, you know, like what your email's in, but then is, like, manifests as an actual cloud which rains down cyber pollen, I believe is what the Doctor calls it, which we're just meant to believe cyber converts people, but that's never explained, and it makes, like, for someone who's seen every single episode of Doctor Who, has, like, no connection to what the Cybermen do. Like, the Cybermen don't pee on people and then that turns them into Cybermen. Like, you have to, like, create a cyber thing and, like, put people in the cyber frame, and that like, deletes their emotions. But this rain seeps into the ground and then somehow turns all these bodies into Cybermen. The biggest problem is, though, that we see the morgue. We see Danny's body on a gurney in the morgue. Or, like, presumably, like you see there is a body on a gurney. You don't see that as Danny. Then water floods into the ground of the morgue. And then Danny leans forward and he's a Cyberman now. At no point was he, like, submerged in the cyber pollen. And there was no point at which he could have possibly been cyber converted on that table while we were looking at it. Like, there's, like, it makes, like, absolutely no sense. Also, all the bodies that are in the, like, containers in the morgue on the wall that, you know, you, like, pull out, all those people presumably get turned into Cybermen because they're banging on the fucking door. But again, there's no way for them to have been cyber converted. So, like, all that stuff with the clouds makes no sense to me at all. Like, I have no understanding of how that's meant to cyber convert people, you know?
Yeah.
And then somehow their consciousness just gets re-downloaded into the appropriate body.
Where's the metal coming from?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing, like, there's, you know, I can deal with some pretty light-handed, like, hand-waving of the mechanics of the plot, but, like, that's really pushing it of, cyber pollen and, like, the like, it feels like an idea completely evolved from Stephen Moffat hearing some, like, whippersnapper say the word, like, oh, the cloud. Yeah. And he, like, Googled what the cloud was. He's like, oh, this is a good idea. Like, he probably did that around the same time he wrote the Bells of St. John with, like, the Wi-Fi monsters. Yeah. Wi-Fi is going to come get you.
Stephen Moffat does not like modernity.
Apparently, yeah.
Technology is not his friend.
Yeah.
Too bad he writes a show that deals with it a lot.
Yeah. And then, okay, the other part of the Cyberman stuff that really pisses me off, because it's so fucking lazy, is the stuff with Danny at the end, where she turns on his emotional inhibitor thing that's supposed to just, like, erase all of Danny's emotions, because that's how Cybermen work, but it just doesn't, because Danny loves Clara. And that's, like, the only explanation you're given, which is just, I was saying to you before we started recording the podcast, is so stupid, because it's acting like Danny is the only person who ever loved anybody in the history of mankind.
Literally, because they're drawing on the corpses from all of human history.
Which also, most of those dead bodies would be in no way fit to be turned into Cybermen. That's another part where the plan completely falls apart.
Yeah.
Is that most of the human corpses in the history of the planet are not really fit to be put into a cyber body.
You might even say a lot of them don't exist.
Yeah.
Because of decay.
Exactly.
Anyway, decomposition. But, yeah, so that... Just nothing here makes sense. This is like the problems with Kill the Moon exacerbated tenfold. Yeah.
Well, at the very least, like, it's not asserting some sort of, like... So, like, the only, like, well-established scientific principle that it's just, like, fucking in the eye is, like, the galactic background radiation. I don't care that much about that. The rest of it is just, like, logical mishaps, not, like...
Well, also, apparently metal is just appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah, sure.
I would say that's a law of conservation of mass problem.
Yeah, but it's like the episode never brings up, like, a missing mass problem in the first place, so I let that slide.
It's just... But this is like Kill the Moon level problems on, like, 5 layers of story that are going on simultaneously. It's nuts.
And also, just bringing it back to... Why the flying fuck does Danny ever bring Clara to that fucking cemetery?
I don't know.
It's just so random. Like, the only reason it happens, again, it's such bad writing, is I know the reason why it happens, is because Stephen Moffat had the cool idea of the Cybermen breaking out of the ground like it's Night of the Living Dead, because even the cemetery looks like the cemetery from the beginning of Night of the Living Dead. It's like, but if you have to have a reason for her to be there, you can't just pluck the character out and just, like, plop her down there and have just have Danny take her there without any reason. It has to be something.
Yes, there should be, but there is not. The writing of this
episode's so bad.
Here's the other thing I want to say. It's not just that the writing is bad and that there's no logic and there's these problems. I also think it's just kind of a poorly made episode. It's poorly directed. It's poorly paced. Yeah. It's got... it's just, there's so little dramatic tension. Again, the climax just happens with them all standing in a graveyard and talking.
Yeah, they spend half the episode just standing there in the graveyard. You're absolutely right about that.
And that's a problem. And then, all the actual, plot mechanics there at the end are problematic too, because it's Danny going through this thing, just standing there, and then he kind of flies up, and the Doctor has this big grand realization about, kind of his history, and they do it just through bringing in clips from better episodes, and then he just stands there and kind of thinks it over, but that takes about 30 seconds, literally this incredibly great, complex Doctor arc you've spent 10 episodes building up, you just wave away in 30 seconds.
Yeah, and even then, his big revelation is I don't need to kill myself. I can just hand this thing to Danny, and he can fly up into the sky, and he'll just blow himself up.
Yeah.
It's
you know what? Yeah. When you say that, that's true.
There's no really grand resolution for the Doctor. The Doctor doesn't do shit. He's just here, go kill yourself, and you can solve all my problems for me.
Boy, it's just... They took a lot of what was good about this season in this episode and just kind of pissed all over it.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Again, I think the last scene... I don't think it works entirely because the build-up to it is non-existent.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of where the Doctor is... Where Clara is clearly... She's trying to tell the Doctor something, but chooses to keep it from him, so he'll be happy. And he chooses to tell her he found Gallifrey, even though he didn't, so she'll be happy. And I think Peter Capaldi's acting in that scene is pretty phenomenal. When he sees that Gallifrey isn't there and his kind of freak out... It's in part because he spent this whole... This has been a performance kind of a reservation in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so when he lets go there, you really feel it for a minute until you turn the episode off and you think, oh wait, does this Doctor care about Gallifrey?
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest part with the ending of this episode, is all of a sudden it feels like this was right after the 50th anniversary, where it's oh, Gallifrey's still important of this idea of where is Gallifrey? It's but it's not. We haven't talked about it. Literally, it's not come up a single time the whole season. And building off a season of, having, almost at, every other episode or something like that, of the Doctor trying to find Gallifrey, and that's, what the reason for him to, land places or something is. I think that's a really good idea for a season arc that you could do if you did it, wisely. That could be kind of like Series 5, where you have a little bit more of, plot intrude, like an overarching plot intruding into the individual episodes instead of just trying to do character stuff. I think that could work spectacularly. Maybe that's what they'll do next season or something, but you can't try to have the conclusion of your episode have this big emotional moment with Peter Capaldi, which I agree, he's so fucking good, but it's you're trying to, and I can kind of get the emotion of the scene just based off of the history of the whole character, but it has nothing to do with what you've built up on this season. It's just something that, of a connection to the character that I have, that I understand why he wants to find Gallifrey really bad, but it's not something you've tried to specifically build up at all.
Well, it's this problem that both Wedding of River Song and Name of the Doctor had, where Matt Smith came so close to selling those episodes. He tried his hardest. If you watch them once, maybe you don't get as angry as you do on repeats, because Matt Smith is doing so much good work to try to sell what's going on in that episode. And I think Peter Capaldi's doing it here. I think Jenna Coleman's doing it here. And I think in the moment, maybe you don't see it as much. And in the moment you start thinking about it, though, you realize how much it falls apart. And that's the problem, is that you get to the end of that, and because they've relied on the actor to try to do all the emotional heavy lifting with no help from the writing, you get to the end and actually nothing has been resolved. That's the problem with Wedding of River Song, is nothing that happened that season really mattered in terms of that finale. It all got pushed off to next year. And The Name of the Doctor, not important. All got pushed off to the 50th special. And with this one, we've had all this great character build-up, and none of it really mattered. That's all going to clearly come back to roost at Christmas. Yeah. And that makes me worried about the Christmas special, because it's not just going to be a good normal Christmas special episode. It's going to be wrapping up Clara and the Doctor and their journey together, which you could have just done in the finale.
Yeah.
And you should have just done then.
The what if they're using that episode to send off Clara and introduce the new companion at the same time, and the new companion is Nick Frost Santa Claus.
I mean, I will give everyone a high five. That'd be great. If
That's not going to happen. But...
Nick Frost being a permanent part of Doctor Who would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because Nick Frost being a part of anything is awesome. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic. But yeah, I don't know. It's just problematic because I don't understand how Stephen Moffat doesn't get to the end of writing these scripts and realizing, oh, I've just given future Stephen Moffat a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know? And I've done nothing.
It's really funny, too, because it's like, he fucked himself so hard in the Matt Smith years with not resolving anything. That's like in Time of the Doctor, he just has to put in like 5 lines of dialogue that are just like, we just need to fix this. We need to fix this. Because I have like 5 overarching plot lines that I have not resolved in the slightest, and I can't have this baggage anymore. So he just like, gets rid of it. And he's doing it again, the poor guy. Like, it's like, stop it. Like, fucking just do self-contained seasons. For fuck's sake, stop.
Or better yet, self-contained episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's just, like, say, fuck it, we're not trying to do, like, these big arcs. We're not going to try to, like, make these, like, finales that have these, like, huge fucking stakes or anything. Like, let's just make episodes of Doctor Who and have fun. Because that's what I think the show should have been the whole time.
Because here's what I think we learned from Season 8. And I want to transition into this discussion.
Yeah.
I think here's the major lesson of Season 8, is that Stephen Moffat is honestly better than ever at writing characters and overseeing other writers. He is really good at that. And that was proof this season, because this had, I think, the sharpest characterization of the Doctor modern Who has ever had, and it had possibly the sharpest characterization of a companion and the relationship with the Doctor this show has ever had. Mm-hmm. And it had a really well done evolution of that within a context of giving other writers chance to tell really original stories that worked and played off those characters. And those strengths are really strong. And they were pretty striking, honestly. I think it was surprising for all of us that this season did that well.
Especially when you got the 1-2 punch of Mummy and Flatline. It was like, holy fucking shit.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. That was the high point of the season, definitely, was that 1-2 punch. But Stephen Moffat happens to be worse than ever at actual story arcing and premieres and finales. He's incapable of doing that anymore. It's just clear. And I don't know, honestly, if he's capable of writing a Doctor Who episode himself anymore, because Listen had a lot of really great stuff in it, but it doesn't work cohesively, necessarily. Sure, and even then, I wonder if that's just kind of a fluky thing, because he gave himself this one-off, and it worked okay, and I just don't know going forward. And so I think if... the only, I still think it would probably be best if Stephen Moffat just left the show. I think his time has come. But if he were to reorient what he actually does and took more of a little hands-off, like, script editor kind of position where he oversaw other writers, maybe contributed his own script once in a while, got rid of these big story arcs, stopped trying to chase the dragon that was Season 5, and just really focus on what his strengths are, which are real as a showrunner. He has strengths. Absolutely.
Like, because even with this, like, finale, like, and for me, I don't think the season arc stuff matters as much for you, but I think this is still one of the strongest seasons New Who has had.
Oh, I think I still think it's the second strongest. Mm-hmm. I would put Season 5 ahead.
Maybe I would too.
Here's the basic reason.
Yeah.
Season 5 doesn't have a bad episode. I think it's got a dull episode or two. I think it's got some ones that are imperfect, and I think there's some logic here and there that doesn't work. But it's a 13... decent to fantastic episodes. Yeah. It's got a clear arc. It's got a, great performance by Matt Smith, great work by Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill, and it ties together and has a punch. It has, I think, what Season 8 does well, and its own thing it does well.
Sure.
Season 8 has some strengths that Season 5 doesn't have, in that it does have some of these individual episodes that are just above and beyond.
Yeah.
And that's why I would put it above every other season New Who has done, but I still don't think it breaks that Season 5 ceiling, in part because it is still so clearly kind of trying to chase that. When you get to the end and see what the totality of this was, they were trying to do that again.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I've said this before, I wonder if Season 5 was kind of the worst thing that could happen to Stephen Moffat. Mm-hmm. Because he made a great season of television that I think is going to endure in Doctor Who history.
Yeah.
But he's also kind of ruined, seasons past that by trying to do it again. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know if that's something you can do again.
Yeah, and it does feel like he wants to sort of, like, pull away from that, because there's been so much effort with Season 7 and now Series 8 that it's like trying to make standalone episodes. But it's like, but then again, it's like you get to the finale and it's like, what the fuck happened? Like, what is... It feels like I'm watching a completely different season of Doctor Who all of a sudden. Because this is like... These are problems that I thought we had just gotten over. Like, I thought that the Series 8 was you figuring out, we don't need to do this anymore. We have a better way to try to handle this now. We don't need to format this the same way we've been formatting it since New Who basically started. It's like... Fuck. Like, goddammit. Like, just get away from it. Like, I think we've, like... I think they need to just get away from it entirely. Like, I would love to see Series 9 have none of the stuff where you have, like, you know, a cutaway in, like, at the end of the episode where you have, like, a stupid scene with, like, Missy, or, like, in Series 6 you have, like, the Madame Kavarian stuff, or, like, the RTD years you had the random keywords, or even Series 5, which did it well, still had the same basic format to it of, like, yeah, the cracks in time. They just found better ways to integrate it into, like, other episodes. It's like, I think they need to get away from that entirely. I think they need to abandon the idea of, like, having the series arc and just have individual episodes and try to have characters develop thematically over the course of those episodes, but don't try to make it a big deal. Like, don't try to make it huge. Because I think that's one of the great things about Peter Capaldi's performance as the Doctor as well, is that I don't think he needs those like, huge action moments. I don't think they make sense with him as the Doctor. It's one of the things that, like, when he's falling out of the plane...
It's felt so wrong.
Yeah, it's like, maybe, like, it would still feel really cheesy, but I could kind of see, like, David Tennant doing it, but...
David Tennant did it all the time.
Yeah,
so
but, like, it's almost like the effect all kind of reminded me of when David Tennant's... I think it's in Silence of the Library, where he's, like, going down into the, like, hard drive or whatever, and he's like, and he's like falling straight down like this.
I forgot.
It's a really cheesy shot that, like, I think of sometimes when I think of David Tennant.
It kind of reminded me of his scene in The End of Time 2, where he falls through the roof.
Yeah. Although that's a good scene. That's really
a great
cool
scene
because it's built up to, like, where he just pushes himself to the edge.
Yeah.
It's kind of Androzani in that way. But yeah, with Peter Capaldi, like, it makes no sense. He's not this, like, man of action thing. That's kind of the point of his Doctor, is he's not trying to hide his age anymore. He's not trying to, like, you know, be the action hero. He just wants to be who he is. And so, like, doing the big action scenes don't make sense. But Peter Capaldi, like, it's really telling that by far the best scene in the whole finale was the one that's, like, this quiet, dark, calculating moment with, like, him and Clara trying to, like, play off of each other, and him, like, you know, they're sort of, like, handling the control of the situation and stuff. He played that fucking unbelievably. You know, it was great. And then you get him in this, like, action scene, and you're like, what the fuck are you even doing? Like, this man's 56 years old. What are you trying to get him to do?
I know, and I mean, this was, I think, a recurring theme throughout these two finale episodes, is I think it kind of forgot what they had done well with both the Doctor and Clara, because I didn't think Clara was well utilized in either of these either.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Clara, again, Clara's the best modern companion. I think when she's used at her best in these episodes... There's nothing else that quite plays off what she has added to episodes consistently.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a big part of this finale too, is that if you go from Deep Breath all the way on to Forest of the Night, those first 10 episodes, that is Clara's story in which the Doctor exists.
Yeah.
That's how that's the perspective. Yeah. That's the POV. These last two episodes, even though it's kind of about Danny dying, the Doctor is totally dominant.
Yeah.
And she's gone for long stretches of time, and she lacks agency for long stretches of time.
Yeah, it's part of the problem of the pacing in the second part, is that they're trying to cut between the Doctor and Clara doing stuff, but they're like, for the full first half of that episode, like, those storylines are just completely separate.
And I think generally that's actually something this season didn't do well, was whenever it would put the Doctor and Clara apart, that didn't work. Even in something like Flatline, they are physically apart, but they're together the whole episode through talking and
playing
whatnot.
off each other.
Yeah, I don't understand why... I mean, that chemistry is so good, I don't know why you'd break it off for their potentially last episodes together, you know. But here's the thing. I mean, we're dwelling on the bad here. Series 8 gave us one of the all-time great Doctors.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Peter Capaldi... I mean, what do we want to say about his... We've had a full season. Yeah. What conclusions are we drawing about the 12th Doctor?
I mean, for me, it's a thing where I feel like... And it's one of the reasons why I think the show... The structure of the show itself needs to adjust to this. Is that Peter Capaldi feels like a classic Doctor in so many ways to me. Like, he reminds me of older Doctors, like, in more specific ways of, like, the style he's acting and the character he's trying to play. Which is not to say that I think that, like, you know, Eccleston and Tennant and Smith didn't necessarily have that, but there was an element where I felt like they were trying to make the show too new, and a lot of that stems from, like, a lot of the romance stuff they tried to do. All that just felt so non-germane to the character of the Doctor, that they're trying, like, to sort of make him modern, but in ways that don't work. Whereas, like, I feel like Peter Capaldi's performance stems naturally from those classic Doctors, where you see so much of that in his performance, but it still feels modern in the sense that it's like the episodes are modern, and his acting style is more modern, that it's a lot more subtle and not so, you know, he doesn't need to sell the effects by his acting, because the effects can stand on their own, so he can just be, you know, playing the part.
Yeah.
He absolutely, he feels like, you know, he feels like, I've said this whole time, he's not trying to tell jokes. He's not trying to him, like the Doctor, is not trying to make a performance for people. He's just trying to be himself, which I think is like, it makes the character, I think, more fun for me to watch, but it also feels like it fulfills something that like New Who has done in sort of like creating a character arc for the Doctor, where that's his character arc now, is that it comments on the older Doctors, that like now what particularly I think Tennant and Smith were doing was a lot of the time it feels like the Doctor himself was playing an act, and now we've gotten like to who he is actually again, and he's just the Doctor, and he doesn't need to have all like the sort of like the time war stuff hanging on him. He doesn't need to have all the romance stuff. He can just be who he is and have fun going about the galaxy, you know?
Yeah. I agree with absolutely everything you said about this. What I would add to it is I think, and I'm not, none of us are making comparisons to other Doctors to put them down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they've all been great.
They're all great, yeah. And we don't even need to say who's better or worse. They're all wonderful. I would just say what's different about Peter Capaldi versus like a Matt Smith is that Matt Smith was the kind of Doctor you would watch every week, and I just felt kind of warm around him. It was fun to watch Doctor Who because this dude was like my friend. He's like, and I think that's why he inspired, and I think David Tennant too, because it's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
They inspire such loyalty in the fans of those Doctors, and to the level where they can't accept new Doctors. There are a lot of people who don't like the 12th Doctor, I think, just because he's different than Matt Smith. But they're the kind of Doctors who you watch them, and it's this level of kind of warmth and trust, and you're looking up to this character and this unquestioning devotion to that character, and I admire that, and I think that was a valuable era of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
What makes Peter Capaldi interesting is that he keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
Every week. You laugh at him a lot, but you also kind of wonder where he's coming from. The writing for the 12th Doctor has been so much more kind of, and again, I'm not using this to put down the other Doctors, but mature. It's about... Yeah. It's really trying to guide and get into psychology and having you question his actions. And I think one of the reasons why we pulled some of the episodes apart this season on that plot logic level is in part because the 12th Doctor, I think, demands it. He's the kind of Doctor who you just watch the episodes more closely because he's there. And, I came to love this character over these 12 episodes. The other day I went back and watched Matt Smith's regeneration scene just to see, like, what does Peter Capaldi look like to me now in his first scene? And it's amazing. He regenerates. And I'm like, yes, that's the Doctor. That's the fucking Doctor, and he's awesome. And it's interesting that we definitely got to that point, but he's also so different. And I think he's allowed the show to go to darker places. He's allowed the show to go to more dynamic places. And within all this, I mean, not just... I think the writing has definitely served Capaldi well, but I also wonder if it's a thing where Peter Capaldi is giving such a good performance, and it is so almost just above the Call of Duty at this point. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that's elevated the writing too, because you watch him come in and do what he does, and I think there just must be something on the writing level of we have to match that. We have to do something for this, because you can't give him nothing, because he'll make something out of nothing, but when you give him something, it's transcendent. Yeah. It's absolutely transcendent.
Yeah, he's so good. He's so fucking good. And there's something that's like, I just really like that we don't, you don't have the stuff that, like, with David Tennant especially had, but even Matt Smith's era also had, of like, oh, I've lived for 950 years and I am the Doctor and I am, I'm Jesus. You don't have the Jesus thing anymore. It's like, it just feels like he's just him. Like, he just gets to be the character. It feels like...
Well, that's the thing. This season, I should say, was a season of, like, actual character study. Yeah. And that's something the Doctor doesn't often get. I think Matt Smith's Doctor, when you look at his last two seasons, 6 and 7, he got elevated to a point where they could have interesting things for that character to do, but actual examination of who the Doctor was, he got a little too distant for that. Mm-hmm. And what made season 5 good was that there really was this kind of question of maybe who this Doctor was and what emotions he was dealing with and his old age and his wisdom in these things. Yeah. And that worked and maybe got diluted a little bit. And I'm kind of expecting that that's not going to get diluted with Peter Capaldi, in part because it's so much stronger here. Yeah. They never just took the Doctor at face value. You don't just throw the word the Doctor out there now and expect it to mean something magically. Mm-hmm. They really have been going in on what this character means. And that's why Clara works so well as a companion, because she's questioning. She's, strong and has a really interesting dynamic with him. And I think she's really transcendent that, just basic, 20-something white girl companion that is the archetype for this show. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, Stephen Moffat has done that twice in a row now. And I like that. And he's doing a good job with that. A little rough at the beginning with Clara, a little rough at the end with Amy. But here's the question about Clara. Yeah. In retrospect, does the rough period with her at the beginning even matter now? Because
no, not at all. I don't think so at all. Yeah. I mean, it almost kind of reminds me of like this is a companion, but for Sylvester McCoy's era as the Doctor is really awkward because you have his first season, like his characterization is almost completely different because they had him be really slapsticky and funny all the time.
I cannot imagine that.
Yeah,
that's weird.
But then in his last 2 seasons, they do a complete turn with that character and they make him really dark. They make him they bring a huge amount of mystery back to him that like sort of belies the question mark umbrella and the question mark sweater vest. But he's like actually mysterious. You don't understand what he's doing. They bring in Ace, who is I still think is probably the best companion the show has ever had. And like, there's the sense that's like, well, it doesn't matter that the first season he had is just like this weird, like, what the fuck? Like, in retrospect, his first season is really bizarre, but it doesn't touch on the later stuff. It's like, because they figured their shit out, and then they stuck with it. And I feel like that's kind of like with Clara's, like, her half season that she had, her characterization is just, like, bland and nothing. But for this season, like, they figured their fucking shit out, and she's a really fucking good companion.
And I think in retrospect, even now that you can look at it as a whole, this obviously was not planned or intentional, but I think you could watch her entire run on the show up to now and even maybe see the logic of how she got to this point.
Sure.
In that the 12th Doctor, I think, is the kind of character who kind of pushed her to become a more assertive person.
Yeah.
And a more interesting person.
Yeah, and a more interesting character.
Yeah. Whereas, I mean, and that's part of the problem is that the way, I mean, this is part of the problem of how they kept Amy and Rory around as long as they did, is that it made Matt Smith's Doctor so dependent on them that whoever the next companion was, it was going to be reactionary. Mm-hmm. And I think there are individual episodes and moments where I like the dynamic they have, where it's just this kind of joy of friendship, but you can't build an arc on that. Mm-hmm. And that was the problem. And I think there are individual moments that work, arc doesn't, and then when you get into this, there's actual challenge again. This Doctor doesn't just automatically need this person in his life to rehabilitate himself. He needs her in his life because she's valuable as a human being.
Like, I wonder if going back and watching that, like, episodes from that half season with Matt Smith and Clara will almost feel like when you watch the last 2 episodes of Peter Davison's run, where his companion was Perry. Those are the only 2 episodes where his companion is Perry. And then Perry is the Sixth Doctor's companion for almost his whole run. So she is so absolutely a Sixth Doctor companion. So when you watch her with Peter Davison, like, you do like this double take of like, oh, wait, fuck, right? Yeah, no, she's the companion in Caves of Androsani. Like, she's with him for, like, this one episode, which works really well there because there's, like, this weird distance between the Doctor and the companion because it's, like, they're only there together for this, like, really short, kind of unfulfilling amount of time. And it's just, like, what Matt Smith and Clara's have now. This is, like, she doesn't seem like she's the 11th Doctor's companion to me at all now when I think about it. Like, she's, like... She has that, like, weird sort of, like, ancillary position in his transition, but then she's just the 12th Doctor's companion. That's, like, who she's paired with.
Absolutely. It's the modern equivalent, I think, of that, actually, is that it's weird to think that River Song was introduced with the 10th Doctor.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's really jarring when you go back and see David Tennant with Alex Kingston.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, let's talk about our final thoughts on this season. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did a lot of stuff well.
Yeah, I think it's a fucking great season. Like, it dropped the ball at the end, but to me that doesn't really matter. Like, I'm interested in getting a lot of really good episodes of Doctor Who, and I think this, like, the ratio of really good episodes for this season is fucking spectacular. And when they're good, like I said, like that fucking Mummy and Flatline, and also Listen, like, those are 3 spectacular episodes of Doctor Who.
Well, the breakdown would be 7 good to 5 bad if we're throwing. That would be on the bad side. That would be Deep Breath, Kill the Moon, Forest of the Night, and the 2-part finale. Yeah. And those 7 that are good are really good. It's not like that was decent. That's a really good episode of Doctor Who.
And even the bad ones, like Kill the Moon, is really frustrating, but it's still got a lot of good stuff. Like, it's like, I think we said that when we reviewed it. It's like it's an episode that's like in the other seasons of Doctor Who, like, it would be kind of fine. It's only like in this one that's like you get really frustrated at it.
It interrupts the qualitative flow of the season, maybe, but it's not one I'll skip when I rewatch the season.
Exactly. Like it's got enough good stuff in it that I'm happy to see it.
Yeah. And I think the same basic thing about Forest of the Night. So you can up that to that middle 9 is a really good run of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And it's bookended by some really awful Doctor Who. But that middle portion is really good, and as you say, Doctor Who does live and die by that individual episode quality, and this season I think proved that more than ever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and not only that, you got like, you got your good individual episodes, but it also this season, so much of it felt really fresh. Like it felt like, they found a lot of interesting things to do. Like I think in particular, one of the revelations of this season is like a lot of the direction for the episodes has been fucking spectacular. Like a lot of the episodes have looked really, really good.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think we talked a lot about how these last 2 Matt Smith seasons looked really good, more on an effects level more than anything else, and that the production value just was going up and up and up. And I think it's less that this season than it is just there was clever direction, there was clever cinematography, a good eye for things. It's more of that almost like, film cinematic analysis side of things that they got better. Like Flatline, that's not an episode that I think cost a lot to make. Yeah. It's just so ingeniously directed.
Yeah, like it feels like you're watching it and you don't feel like you're watching a TV show, Like you feel like it might as well be a movie for the way it's directed. Right.
Yeah. Man. So, best episode?
Fuck, probably Mummy. I would say Mummy would probably be my best episode. I had like Flatline as a real special place in my heart because I think like the idea for that episode is just so fucking cool.
And they follow up on it. It's great.
Yeah. But I think Mummy is probably like beat for beat probably is the best episode this season.
Yeah, I think it's the best episode this season too. I think, in terms of when I was just watching it and reacting to it, it was The Caretaker for me. But I think when you really you think about the episodes more, you discuss them more. I mean, Mummy was the best discussion I think we had of an episode this year because it gives you the most to talk about. Mm. And I have to wonder a little bit if something like The Caretaker, because of how Danny-centric it is and the romance with her and Clara, is that going to be muddled at all by where that ended up?
I don't think so. I think that episode's probably still just so much fun.
It is.
The performances are so good.
That's the thing. Like, if this I wouldn't mind them doing an ending where Danny dies. I guess it would just have to be done better than this. Yeah. And I have to assume maybe he'll come back. If he doesn't, that's just this whole season built to something way too dark and sad.
It's almost kind of like when Rory just is kind of just gone and Angels Take Manhattan. It's just like if you just end it with Danny. Like the last thing we saw of Danny was like the doctors being like, "Go!" Like he flies up into the sky and explodes. Like what? No, that's not. That's so dumb. Like that can't be the resolution for this character.
All right, so we talked about the best episode. Pick the worst.
Oh fuck.
I know mine. You want me to start?
Yeah, I mean it would be this finale.
It's Death in Heaven. It's Death in Heaven easily because,
honestly, I probably actually got more angry at Kill the Moon, but Kill the Moon's not a worst episode. It's just personally, I just got mad at it. But this one is really bad.
And I think it's because this is one that has more weight on it. And it's honestly, this was the most excruciating to watch. Just if I disconnect everything else, this episode annoyed me the most in just watching. I thought this was bad television. But, it's also that level of, again, this could potentially mar some things the season did well. It's that level of they dropped the ball on things I was really excited to see them get right. And that's disappointing. I think you could also pick Deep Breath for what a bad taste it put in your mouth after that first episode. But they switched from that so fast, it almost doesn't matter.
Even then, I feel like Deep Breath has enough good stuff in it, to me at least, that's like Death in Heaven doesn't, it has, the last scene is kind of good, but it's not, but that's such a small moment, that's, doesn't... And it's also, I feel like it's a moment that's good intellectually, but, the only way it really works is if the rest of the episode worked, whereas, I feel like Deep Breath, it's really good scenes kind of just work on their own because they're, so off away from the plot,
That's very true. Very true. It's a weird thing. This was kind of a weird season ultimately too because
it'll be really weird when I marathon this season and rewatch Deep Breath and have fucking Madame Vostra and shit in there. It's what the fuck is this?
There's such a relic.
Yeah, there's such a a holdover from the Matt Smith era that they stayed way too long in that era. Anyways, hopefully they never come back. Hopefully we've seen the last of those characters, and you can maybe have Strax come back for a joke one time. I'd be kind of happy for it.
Here's the thing: I like that you say they stayed way too long because they basically that team comes in 8 episodes from the end of his run.
Well, they're in Good Man Goes to War,
but they don't come up again until Snowman. And then in their actual final characterizations. But I agree. Yeah, they stayed too long.
Yeah, they could maybe have come up in Snowman, and that would have been fine just there.
They should never have come back. Yeah, because none of the times they come back are good. Yeah. In fact, those are all bad episodes with Crimson Horror and Name of the Doctor, and Deeper. Boy, we're naming some shitty episodes.
Remember when Ginny died in Name of the Doctor, and then they just bring her back? Remember that with that character?
What? Oh, right, yeah.
She gets killed in Name of the Doctor, and they just bring her back like 10 minutes later.
Jenny, I forgot who you're talking about.
Yeah,
because it's Jenny and...
Well, Madame Foster's wife. I think they're married. They're probably married. I think they're at least in some sort of lesbian relationship, but they're probably married. They're married.
What?
Yeah.
Did they mention this?
I don't think so. I think they left it really subtle. I think they wanted the audience to sort of like piece that out from some subtle hints and clues.
If Stephen Moffat is known for anything, it's his subtlety.
Yeah, and it's also really well pacing out his episodes and like letting them breathe. He's so good at that.
I just the dude has talent. He needs to learn how to channel it.
Yeah, like it's just such a bummer that like season finales in Doctor Who have to be so bad all the time. Because they really like the track record's pretty fucking miserable when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at this. So let's do Modern Who really quick. Season 1, I think the finale has a lot of great stuff in it, minus the Bad Wolf stuff.
Yeah, but even then, like it's like season 1's a good finale, but it has like it's kind of up and down, and then the end of it's just really distasteful to me.
Well, the Bad Wolf stuff is dumb, but I like the final moments between the Ninth Doctor and Rose.
Yeah, the last scene. Great, yeah. The last scene is good, but
the resolution of the story is dumb. There's plenty of good stuff in there. The season 2 finale is awful. Season 3 finale is really awful.
Oh, super bad.
The season 4 finale has a bunch of good stuff and a bunch of messy stuff.
Yeah, it is super stuffed.
Yeah. Let's see. David Tennant's actual exit episode is great, but the preceding episode is terrible. So who knows what the hell you make of that?
It's
season 5, fantastic finale.
Yeah, very good finale.
Season 6, what the fuck?
Oh my god!
Season 7, kind of just there.
Yeah, Name of the Doctor is really. Name of the Doctor is not a good episode. Also, doesn't feel like a finale because it's just the episode just kind of stops and then waits for the 50th anniversary to come around.
Yeah. Here's a question: what's the worst finale of all of these that we're naming?
I mean, I would have to say the third season's that
one just because that's a weird one to me though because I think Utopia is a good episode.
Yeah, Utopia is a very good episode.
I think the next one has a lot of good stuff in it, and it's just it starts high and just down.
Remember that whole episode where like the fucking human race has been like subjugated by the Master and like the human race from the future, or whatever the fuck that was.
Yeah.
And then Martha walks like the whole planet, spreading the message of the Doctor, and then the power of everybody's like faith for the Doctor and love of the Doctor turns him into like a Super Saiyan, and he defeats the Master.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like that's when you talk about like Doctor Who getting crazy. Like that's legitimately probably the weirdest thing Doctor Who has ever done.
Yeah, no, that actual finale, that last part of the 3-parter is the worst. But I will say this. I prefer like the one of the Russell T Davies finales like season 2 or season 4 to one of these overstuffed Stephen Moffat ones.
Yeah, I think season 1, 2, and 4 all have better finales than
5, 6, or 6, 7, 8.
6, 7, and 8. Yeah, definitely.
Well, we'll see what happens next. Luckily, we don't have that long to wait for the Christmas special.
Yeah,
that should be fun. I mean, I'm interested in it. I hope it's good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with. I don't think they've ever done Santa Claus on Doctor Who. I'm trying to think. I don't think they've ever literally had Santa Claus pop up.
And they've never had Nick Frost prop up.
That's true,
I am happy. I'm going to be happy with it no matter what, because it's got Nick Frost in it.
And there was something that kind of like warmed my heart in this episode, that they brought back that weird Russell T Davies thing of having the end, like the season finale, lead into the Christmas special in like this like incredibly bizarre and intrusive way. Like they should have just had Nick Frost burst through the wall of the TARDIS like the Titanic at the end of season 3,
like the Kool-Aid guy.
Yes.
No, that would have been great.
Ho ho ho!
Like he flies his sleigh into it.
Like I think it would have been great if like the episode should have like ended on like cutting back to Peter Capaldi after Nick Frost walks in and just going, "What?" and then cutting there.
But his reaction shot was pretty great.
Yeah,
Peter Capaldi gives a good reaction shot.
Yeah, it's like that was one of the great things about the end of the Dark Water episode was like when he finds out that Missy is the Master, like his expression on the face of like that just. Like that's like in like one that you could just like take that screenshot and just like put "oh shit" at the bottom and just like whenever something like really just traumatizing happens in your life, you just like pull that out and just like because that conveys more of that emotion than any other human being possibly could.
Yes, so things to look forward to at Christmas. I'm a little disappointed they already used Simon Pegg, so they can't have Simon Pegg as like the head elf for Nick Frost Santa.
That's right. I totally forgot that he's in the first season
because it's like before he was famous or anything.
Yeah, he plays
I hope they bring him back one day. He can play a different character. It's fine.
That's fucking right. No, I forgot this. The finale to season 1 starts off with them going back to the reality show thing. Mm-hmm. Fuck. New Who's really weird. Like as
It's really
like as
weird.
when you look at Doctor Who in its entirety, like you think that like the old shit from like the 60s would be like the corniest, lamest part of the show. I don't think it is. Like I think legitimately a lot of the places that New Who goes are like can get so dumb. It's kind of unbelievable.
But yet, Series 8 was a year of defying expectations.
Exactly. Like that's one of the things that, like, when I say it reminds me of Classic Who, like, I think it does it in a really good way of, like, it going back to, like, the core of the show. But, like, not necessarily, like, making all the sets wobble and shit, but, like, the core ideas of the show and, like, who the Doctor is as a character and what, like, how you write the episodes and what the episodes are about. Feels like it's, like, that's what this season is like. It's like, fuck yeah. Like, this is fucking Doctor Who, motherfucker.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, so, good definitely a very good season on the whole. It's this weird thing where I think this is why the show needs to really take that, arcing out of it, because it wants you to view it as this kind of full cohesive season, but it doesn't work on that level.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So you have to view it on this different level, which is a valid level.
Yeah.
But the show needs to just take stock of its strengths and weaknesses, and you know what? I would give them the benefit of the doubt after this, because clearly they did that before this season.
Yeah.
They didn't take stock of all of the strengths and weaknesses, but they really ironed a lot of things out.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you compare this season to, like, Season 7, it's kind of, like, crazy, like, how much better it is.
I hold that, like, Season 7 box set I have in my hands, and I don't know what it is. It's like the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in there. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It starts with the fucking Dr. Wish in the Wardrobe episode.
Oh, God.
I mean, what's going on?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, Season 8, like a fucking, I think overall they an incredible start for a great new Doctor Who. So
Absolutely. And you can only really be happy about that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't care that this finale was really shit. Like, I'm super stoked for, like, getting to watch the Christmas special.
Been a good year to be a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for this week. I think we can be back next week. You doing anything next weekend?
I have no idea.
Oh, we'll find out.
I might not be.
Okay. Well, we'll see. If we have time, we'll do one next week.
Yeah.
Probably talk about Assassin's Creed Unity, see what else is going on. I did not talk about movies this week because we just didn't have time, but I think I'll do that next week. There's so many movies.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yes. All right, so that's it. Doctor Who, yay?
Yeah. Okay, this is one thing I forgot to mention. It's like, I feel like we need, like, a swear jar for Stephen Moffat, but a Doctor Who jar. I have to say, in Dark Water, the Doctor said Doctor Who. He pulled, like, Peter Capaldi pulled it off better than Matt Smith did, but he still said it. So I like someone needs to just kick Stephen Moffat in the shin every time he does that. Also, every time he writes in, like, the Doctor kisses someone should just, like, slap him in the face or something, because it's not. He's put, like, a quarter in the fucking swear jar because it's not good. Doctor Who.